Everything begins with a giant beast frightening people and destroying the city. Amid all that, there was a boy standing still, looking at the sky. Suddenly, his body started to be surrounded by electricity, and it seemed to hurt him so much that he fell to the ground. He even began to levitate among all those flashes of lightning. Now, enveloped in a pink light and electricity, it seemed he was regaining consciousness. He suddenly opened his eyes, as if he had just awoken from a terrible nightmare. He thought he shouldn't be awakening his talent yet, as he was still seeing those hallucinations caused by the awakening process. He was sitting on his bed, looking out the window. 100 years ago, countless special rifts opened above the earth. Ferocious dimensional beasts invaded the planet and threatened humanity. However, the dimensional energy also stimulated the talents of humans. A small number of humans awakened talents, and thus, humanity entered the era of talents. Someone knocked on the door, calling for him, asking if he had already awakened his talent, just as he had woken up. He went to check a device that measured talents, and it said his talent was weak. But he wasn't willing to accept that he'd be doomed for the rest of his life. If he couldn't become a martial warrior, how would he protect his sister in the future? After his sister knocked on the door calling for him, she decided to enter and asked him how it went. She wanted to know about his talent evaluation. To avoid upsetting his sister and not disappoint her, he told her it was excellent. His sister was very proud to hear those words from her brother. Trying to force a fake smile, he told her not to worry, that her older brother would undoubtedly become a super powerful martial warrior. She, being the cute younger sister, jumped with joy, saying she always knew her brother was the best. She called him for a meal because she had made his favorite dish and wanted to celebrate his awakening. But just as she turned around to leave the room, a strange window appeared in front of him. The girl stopped in front of him and told him to hurry up. What was he waiting for? But at that moment, the status window information also appeared. A little later, the window showed that his talent was inferior to hers. While he stood there in shock, his sister touched his arm, pulling him to come eat before the food got cold. While she dragged him by the arm, his settings were changing. Now, it displayed his talent alongside hers and said it was copyable. He didn't know what that meant. However, there was an option to copy talent, where he could choose whether he wanted to copy it or not. He no longer felt like a loser. His situation had changed. It was no longer hopeless. He thanked his sister for cooking for him, and she happily said she made roasted pork, his favorite dish. When he looked at the table, he noticed she had put a lot of effort into it, lovingly asking him to eat. That ability to copy talents was incredible, but he couldn't test it on his sister, so he decided not to copy it. His sister's talent was truly extraordinary and very rare. Once she fully awakened, she would surely crush her opponents. He thought that if his father and mother were hearing all this, they would feel relieved now. Leaving home, he went to find some people to test his talent, but no one was around. It seemed the effective distance for viewing someone's talent was only 3 meters, which he thought was a bit short. Everywhere he looked on the street, he saw that everyone's talents were inferior to his. He realized all those talents were really bad. He wanted to at least copy a mid-level talent. So he walked a bit further and had an idea. He could enroll in an academy that offered talent evaluations. He then stopped at the 5th Base Academy, thinking that there should be many people there with intermediate talents. With the copying talent he had awakened, he would become stronger than all of them in the future. 10 days later, at the Martial Stadium of the 5th Base Academy, number 3, someone was saying that to become a martial warrior, they must first become a martial apprentice. Then, the teacher said they were about to start, reminding them they would only succeed if they could create an air vortex in front of their chest. Many of them tried. Someone even fainted trying to do what the teacher had asked. The teacher told them to ignore the weak ones, saying their only hope was to create an air vortex if they wanted to be martial warriors. Tian was thinking about how it was possible not to create anything at all. The level of talent was very low. The teacher announced that since that was all for the day, they were the worst class he had ever taught. He said he expected them to follow Qingdong's example and boost their motivation, instead of being a bunch of slackers. Tian was already tired from trying so much and not achieving anything, and now he had to hear the teacher saying that. He asked his new classmate who the guy the teacher mentioned was. The boy mentioned wasn't an ordinary person. It only took him half a month to become a martial apprentice, and now even the principal had accepted him as a disciple. Even getting the guy's autograph made them excited, wondering how much that autograph would be worth when he became really powerful. Tian pretended to be interested. He was walking around with his friend, observing destroying the people, when he noticed his classmate had already run off, chasing after Chendong, asking for more autographs. Seeing that Chendong was there, the boy who could copy talents was very satisfied. He looked for a way to touch him to copy the popular guy's ability. Chendong asked everyone to calm down and said he was there at the teacher's request to encourage them. The clever boy asked to shake his hand. Chendong said yes, and they started forming a line to shake his hand. He was greeting everyone, waiting for their turn, and he kept shaking hands with others. Then, Tian's turn came, and he was very excited to gain that power, so he shook his hand to copy and even thanked him. After encouraging everyone, the boy who copied the talent watched him leave and thought he had succeeded. He left to hide in a cave as it was raining, wondering if fusing talents was a good or bad idea. Then he remembered the hallucinations he had been having, and when he was electrocuted in the air, it hurt a lot. He wanted to know what it meant, but he didn't see a problem in feeling a bit of sweetness, as it increased his power. So, he began to fuse and also felt unpleasant pains. It was as if his whole body was going to break apart at any moment. It hurt a lot, but he managed to fuse the talents. Meanwhile, the rain poured down with many thunderstorms, but now he was an intermediate talent. That was really good. Changing the talent and being completely reborn was worth the pain. Another status window opened in front of him, showing his talent copying abilities and that there were 30 days remaining. He thought that this ability was incredible. He wanted to try the body training technique that the teacher had taught earlier that day, and this time, he was able to do exactly as the teacher had instructed. The technique was much easier to activate now that he had an intermediate level cultivation talent. He no longer wanted to just be a martial warrior, he wanted to become an elite martial warrior or even a great martial warrior. Time passed, and 1 month later, on a dark night, a wild beast was hunting prey. A father and daughter were heading out to get dinner, with the daughter asking what they would have, and the father responding that it would depend on what she wanted. Tian had passed by them, thinking that even though he was still a martial apprentice, the father was talking with his daughter on one side of the street, and the young man, Chendong, was having individual sessions with the director. When that hungry wild beast suddenly attacked the father who was walking with his daughter, the boy noticed. When he turned around, he saw that the beast was attacking the girl's father, and she was screaming desperately. Now the beast was staring at the little girl, and Tian wasn't sure if he should defend her or not. People saw that a huge monster had attacked someone, but instead of helping, they were running away. He saw a monster for the first time and realized that the girl would be the monster's next target. Seeing the beast rushing toward the girl, he didn't think. He jumped too fast and wouldn't be able to escape, or at least that's what he thought as he saw the beast chasing him. Then, at that moment, something descended from the sky. That person landed, breaking the ground, and began fighting the giant beast. The beast was preparing to counterattack, as this person was getting in the way of its hunt. The person who had come to fight the beast apologized for arriving late. He was truly monstrous, so much so that he caught Tian's attention, who asked who he was. He replied that everyone called him Captain Gay Wolf. He told the boy to leave the Silvermoon Wolf to him and protect the little girl. That's exactly what he was going to do, protect the little girl who had just lost her father. The captain charged toward the monster, and the fight between them began. The boy covered the girl's eyes so she wouldn't see all the brutality. He was impressed by how strong the captain was. The captain was attacking the animal, but the beast was agile and very strong. As expected of a Silvermoon Wolf, it couldn't be underestimated for its speed, but no one could forget that. It had allies, and that's when other superheroes arrived to help hunt down the Silvermoon Wolf. With all those people now, the animal wouldn't have much of a chance. However, it was very agile and fast. Even though there were several people surrounding it, the animal was still giving them trouble. At least 5 people were trying to catch it, but it kept dodging them. Eventually, the moment came when it was inevitable. The animal was tired, and there were too many of them. They managed to take down the beast, but in doing so, they activated the beast's bloodthirsty mode. Now they had to be twice as careful. The animal alternated between attacking the closest person. It was going all out, now furious. Tian, watching everything, wondered how much power it took to catch such a beast, but the heroes weren't worried, as they were still going after it. Despite trying to escape, the captain said that thing wasn't going anywhere. They were waiting for the archer, who had just arrived. With excellent aim, she pointed and aimed at the feral beast, and the inevitable happened. The arrow hit the beast directly. The captain told the beast that it was too weak to take them all on. Tian, on the other side of the street, saw them talking among themselves and realized the level of strength one must have to one day fight like them. However, when he saw the talents of the monsters, the Silvermoon Wolf's blood talent was low, and its speed talent was beginner level. That's how it was. Even looking at it, he couldn't believe those were the monster's talents. Something was strange because the animal began to react. He was watching when the animal started to move, and the guys wanted to go out for drinks because dealing with fast monsters was a hassle. Then the captain shouted at them to be careful, as they had been careless and didn't see the monster heading their way. That's when they realized it was still alive and ordered everyone to back away immediately. Monsters were truly terrifying, and seeing its tenacity, they asked the captain what they should do. He said not to worry, the monster was now weak and he could handle it. The captain, looking at the boy, told him that the area was no longer safe and to leave immediately. When the boy didn't move, the captain shouted, asking if he had heard him, and told him not to just stand there. But he couldn't help it. He saw the perfect opportunity right in front of him. He ran toward the beast before the heroes could reach it, and managed to touch it, giving it a punch. And at that moment, he successfully copied the monster's talent. However, the impact threw him far away, but it didn't matter because the monster's talent had been successfully copied. That was all that mattered to him. While he was overjoyed that he had obtained the talent, the others were still fighting the beast to finish it off. After the first punch, he wanted to hit it again to make sure he had copied the monster's talent. But eventually, the captain grabbed his hands, saying that the monster was already dead. It was obvious, but the most important thing was that he had copied the talent, and it had worked. The captain shouted at the others to start cleaning up the mess, told 3 of them to take care of the bodies of the man and the Silvermoon Wolf, and asked another to look after the little girl. Speaking to the young man, he said he couldn't wait for him to join his squad and that he should come find him when he became a martial warrior. Tian, hearing that, became very excited because it was exactly what he really wanted to do. Before going home, he decided to clean his face, as his sister might get worried, thinking the blood was his. After cleaning up, he returned as if nothing had happened. When he got home, everything was tidy as usual, and he noticed that his sister was already asleep. Even with her eyes closed, she realized he had arrived, but she was too sleepy to get up. It was the first day he saw a monster with his own eyes. His sister had left the table set, and he grabbed a blanket to wrap himself in, and he found that 10 times or 100 times more terrifying than the monsters from the stories. He then took a towel and went to his room to see if the monster's talent could fuse with a human body. He didn't know if it could be more painful than the previous talent fusion, and there was even a possibility it could risk his life. But he needed to become stronger to protect the people who would be important to him. He put the towel in his mouth and began. He was going to get stronger, no matter the cost. As soon as he started copying, he also began to feel a pain he thought would be unbearable. His bones hurt, and it felt like they were breaking. Everything was going well, but his legs were in unbearable pain. He was going to endure it, even though it felt like they were breaking. That's when he realized the talent copy had failed, and he couldn't believe that after all that pain, it hadn't worked. But he needed to find a way to get stronger to take care of his sister. He spent the whole night thinking about it, but then he felt something different in his hands. He was incredibly strong now, his body was free, and upon observing his talent, he had advanced to a medium level, and his speed was now at a beginner's level. The copy had been a success. He went to train in the 5th Academy Forest. He needed a place to train his speed alone, and realized he was now incredibly skilled. Even passing close to someone, they wouldn't even notice it was him. He was that fast. He was very happy. The speed of the Silver Moon Wolf was incredible, and he continued training a bit more because, besides obtaining the skills, he also needed to cultivate. His speed was comparable to that of a warrior at that moment, but overall, his skills were far from powerful. It would be good if he could speed up his cultivation. At that moment, his friend Zhang Bao was there, waving at him as he approached, asking what he was doing, since he couldn't find him at the academy. He had been secretly training hard there. Then, touching his friend, he said that he had a stone and was already an apprentice. Tian asked him how he knew that, and his friend said that improving his powers faster could be done by drinking the blood of a fierce beast. But Tian didn't know what he was talking about, so Zhang explained that he had improved faster than expected because he had already drunk some. Hearing his friend's explanation, Tian felt upset because there was a lot of Silver Moon Wolf blood around back then, but he hadn't taken any and missed out. His friend told him there was still a way to get some fierce beast blood if he wanted to try. Tian liked the idea and said he wanted to. Then his friend explained that the seafront base authorities had opened a wild area outside the city for the 5th Academy to conduct tests, and the prize for that test was the blood of a fierce beast. So, Tian wanted to know what level that wild beast was, and his friend explained that it was very low. Fierce beasts had been eradicated. Only a descendant of a fierce beast remained, a wild beast. Tian thought that wasn't bad and that it was worth trying. That's what his friend was saying. If Tian joined his team, they would defeat the fierce beast together. Tian hesitated a bit. His friend, calling him by name, asked about his strange expression, saying he was only offering this because they were friends. Tian apologized and said he would join him next time. His friend commented that, for a moment, he thought Tian wouldn't accept, not knowing why Tian seemed so cruel. With Tian right in front of him, his friend asked him to wait. Not being on the same team didn't mean they weren't friends. But Tian was thinking it would be easy to stand out in a team, and if he were exposed, it would be a disaster. It was better to stay alone. He would have to get the fierce beast's blood and become a warrior. 1 month later, at the 5th Academy, the instructor asked Tian why he came to enroll without an invitation, and if someone had leaked the information. Ignoring the instructor's questions, Tian said he had already become a martial apprentice, which made him qualified for the exam. The instructor laughed mockingly. He said that he wanted them to live longer. Throwing the document in Tian's face, he said it seemed they only wanted to die. Tian bent down and picked up the document that had fallen to the ground. Reading it, he realized it was a liability waiver for his life. The instructor said he was right. If Tian wanted to participate, he had to sign the waiver. Tian responded that he understood. Angrily, the instructor stood up and said if Tian didn't want to sign, he could leave his office. Tian looked at him intensely. After that, Tian was walking down the hallway, smiling and satisfied with what he had done. Moments earlier, he had signed the document. The instructor, deep in thought, wondered if they thought the test was made for just anyone. He kept saying they would regret it. At Tian's house, his sister had just woken up. With sleepy eyes, she rubbed them. She got up and called for her brother. She told him it was time to wake up, but looking to the side, she was surprised by the table, already set with breakfast. She spotted a note just below a glass. Reading it, she wondered what kind of event lasted 3 days. She tried to convince herself that he wouldn't be in danger. In an abandoned city, where only crows could be seen flying, the students were preparing for the event. Talking among themselves, the students formed groups and discussed strategies. Tian commented that there were many people at the location, and his friend said the reason was that students from all 5 main academies had gathered there. Seeing Tian and his peers, a boy asked if they were from the 5th Academy. The boy with an intimidating aura asked the guard what the useless students from the 5th Academy were doing at the exam. The guard replied that during the exam, he could hunt beasts and other participants, so the weaker, the better. With a superior air, the boy said the weak should feel lucky to be hunted by the strong. Zhang Bao asked if Tian could see, stating that the boy was Mo Shou Bei, one of the geniuses from the 1st Academy. He was also the strongest of the younger generation of the Mo family. Tian replied that he wasn't surprised by his arrogance, now that he knew Mo Shou Bei belonged to the Mo family. Suddenly, a sword was dragged across the ground, causing sparks. An unknown boy approached Mo Shou Bei with a sword. The guard asked who he was and how he dared to approach with a weapon. The boy stopped and told Mo Shou Bei to come closer because he would cut him into 1,000 pieces. Mo Shou Bei asked the boy if he was going to lose again. The boy didn't respond, only smiling with excitement for the fight. Tian asked who the boy was. His friend responded that it was Li Yunxing, a genius swordsman from the 2nd Academy, who harbored hatred for Mo Shou Bei because he had already lost to him. Angry, the guard spat on the ground, saying he was just another ignorant country boy. He told those around him to stop fooling around, accusing everyone of being blind. Tian didn't like being called blind and thought to himself that the guard was the real blind one. Suddenly, Tian shouted out loudly, betting 50 on Li Yunxing. Li Yunxing wondered who was cheering for him and why he wasn't afraid of Mo Shou Bei, finding the situation a bit embarrassing. Over the loudspeaker, an announcement was made that fights were prohibited outside the wild zone. Li Yunxing said he would let Mo Shou Bei live for now. With skill, he sheathed his sword, and he said that when they were in the wild zone, he would take down Mo Shobei. Mo Shobei taunted him, calling him an undisciplined mutt. Approaching Yi Tian, he called out to him. He asked if Yi Tian had the courage to cheer in front of Mo Shobei and asked for his name. Yi Tian responded, giving his name and stating that he was from the 5th Academy. Mo Shobei was surprised but said nothing. Li Yunqing said Yi Tian's name was cool. Finally, the exam began, and everyone headed for the wild zone. Mo Shobei and his guard also quickly left. Zhang Bao cheerfully exclaimed that it had finally started. Then he left, telling Yi Tian he'd see him there. Li Yunqing mentioned that the students from the 1st Academy would leave first, followed by the 2nd Academy, and that the 5th Academy would be last. Li Yunqing said he had to return to his team and bid Yi Tian farewell, wishing him good luck. Yi Tian had already planned where he would go. With extreme speed, he headed toward a place where he couldn't be seen. Focused, he continued until he found the perfect spot. Jumping between trees, he finally found a place where no one could see him. He opened the status window. The window displayed a message saying he had copied the swordsmanship talent and asked if he wanted to fuse with it. He quickly responded yes. The fusion began, accompanied by extreme pain. Yi Tian said he was getting used to the pain, having already gone through it twice. Fighting to endure, he told himself he needed to get stronger. A column of aura was visible in the middle of the forest. Opening his eyes, which glowed purple, Yi Tian took a sword-drawing stance to test his new talent. With a swing of his sword, he cut down a large number of trees. Now more confident, Yi Tian had 2 mid-rank talents and 1 novice-rank talent. The loudspeakers announced that all 4 academies had entered the wild zone, and now it was the 5th Academy's turn. Now that the 5th Academy had permission to enter and explore the area, they learned it was a desolate place. At the start of the competition, Yi Tian felt very confident. He sensed something's presence and immediately went to attack, wanting that talent for himself. He attacked the large beast. With his new powers, it was easy to defeat the creature. He fought it for a moment and quickly won. After his victory, he claimed his reward as soon as it fell, taking its eyes, as they would count as points. A wild beast might seem weak, but according to the test rules, the more wild beasts they killed, the higher their ranking. There was still a long way to go. For now, he would continue hunting more wild beasts. He heard a cry for help and rushed to see what was happening. He realized it was his friend in trouble. His friend was screaming that he didn't want to die, not even having a wife yet. But the beast was snorting with rage and was about to leap toward him. Yi Tian realized that if he didn't help, his friend would be in serious trouble. Grabbing one of his arrows, he aimed at the beast. His friend, terrified and curious, wondered who was saving his life. Tian was prepared to finish off the beast. He turned to his friend and asked if he would give him the points. His friend, recognizing that it was Yi Tian, told him to run, as the wolf was too strong for him. But nothing would stop him now, as he was too hungry for talent. With his new speed, he rushed toward all those wolves, knowing that the more beasts he took down, the higher his score would be. His thirst for power was evident in his eyes. He had already gained talents in speed and swordsmanship. He was like a madman, collecting wolves and talents. Now, seeing that Yi Tian could handle the beasts, his friend told him he could take as many as he wanted. Yi Tian had just finished off the beast and was collecting his rewards. He asked his friend if he minded if he took the wolf's teeth. His friend said he didn't mind and that Yi Tian could take all of it. Tian asked his friend if he would continue in that state. His friend replied that he had already given up and would leave. He said the test had become too dangerous, and he was content just to be alive. All of his companions were injured, and he needed to get them out quickly, saying he should at least survive. Yi Tian said that seemed like the only option, and his friend began to distance himself. Then Yi Tian remembered to warn him about a fake beast in the forest, telling him to be careful, shouting it to him. When his friend heard about the fake beast, he got excited. Even a fake one posed a significant threat. His friend heard rumors that the students from the 1st Academy were gathering around a striped snake over 10 meters long, worth 500 points. The protagonist's eyes sparkled upon hearing that he would earn 500 points, and of course, he could also increase his talents. He shook his friend and asked him which direction he wanted to speak so quickly. He simply pointed with his finger, indicating it was to the southeast. Yi Tian headed in that direction at maximum speed, leaving leaving only a trace of his skill behind. He thought that with 500 points, he would be in first place if he eliminated. The friend who watched him leave quickly was fearing for his life, but he didn't need anyone to feel sorry for him, as he was moving at full speed, trying to see if he could catch up with that beast. He covered a large distance in a short time but then felt something. He paused for a moment and looked around. There were several bodies of people badly injured on the ground. He realized they were from the First Academy, recognizing them by their uniforms. But ahead, he heard a huge explosion and realized where it was coming from. He ran toward the direction of the fire as fast as he could to see if he could arrive in time to earn some points from the beast. When he arrived, he could observe from the top of the old, abandoned building the ferocious fake beast. It was something surprising, and several were attacking the fake beast at the same time, yet it didn't even seem to be feeling anything. They were all desperate to take down the beast and eliminate it because they wanted the 500 points that would go to Mo Xiao Bei. One of them informed the young master that the ferocious fake beast was starting to run out of stamina, and it was now or never. It was perfectly facing them, even though there were many. He became very excited and said he could handle the rest himself and ran up to claim the 500 points. He jumped up and positioned himself to finally attack. From the look of joy on No Xiaobei's face, he was sure that with just that strike, he would eliminate the beast to earn the 500 points. He was on top of its head, trying to defeat it with his sword, thinking it was already a success. But it decided to retaliate and sent him flying so far that he crashed into the wall of another building. From there, he shouted that the 500 points were his. The chaos was so great that it was hard to tell whether he had defeated the beast or not. From the top of that building, Yi Tian watched to see if the beast had been taken down. He felt sad because he thought he had arrived too late. Still, he didn't take his eyes off the chaos happening below, not even for a moment. Mo Xiao Bei, after being thrown away, was rushing back to the location where the beast was, and everyone was already congratulating him for having earned the 500 points. He was smiling happily, thinking he had achieved first place in the challenge. Because the fake wild beast was lying on the ground, the victory would easily be his. But that was not how it happened. The beast simply rose up again with an unyielding force. That giant snake seemed much fiercer now than before. They shouted to the young master that the beast was still alive and fighting, and now it was bloodthirsty, wanting to take revenge on all who had tried to take it down. That was not a furious fake beast, it was a true ferocious beast, and they were asking if they were still going after it. The leader said of course they would, as now it was worth 1,000 points, and everyone's eyes widened because they hadn't imagined how much that beast was worth. He told them that they would be giving an advantage to someone else if they didn't hurry, and everyone took off running after the beast. It had become very weak from their attacks. They couldn't let anyone encounter it now. Otherwise, all of his points would have been in vain, and since the beast had gone far away, they had to search for it again. From the top of that building, he didn't think it was a ferocious beast worth 1,000 points. He even felt a little for them, but they weren't as fast as Yi Tian was. So he would use the speed talent to run as fast as he could. He prepared himself, gathered his energy, and activated it. Now nothing and no one would reach that wild beast before him. He was covering a long path at insane speed, looking everywhere to find traces of it. Since he hadn't spotted it yet, he decided to go down and look below for any sign that could help him track it faster. He thought the people from the First Academy wouldn't be there anymore. The mucus secreted by the striped snake was hiding there. Now he knew where it was and was facing that location. It seemed then that the 1,000 points would have a new recipient. He was finding the smell of the snake torturous. It should be somewhere around there, and by the odor, it wasn't far away. Looking up, he noticed its shadow and realized it was truly colossal. He also noticed that it was drinking something. He just didn't know exactly what it was. He thought it couldn't be ordinary water, but he needed the 1,000 points and the elements it might have. He would leave his worries for later after securing the 1,000 points, energized his sword, and was ready to attack. He quickly shot up to reach it and deliver a blow, but it was much faster than him, sending him far away and making his sword go elsewhere. He performed several somersaults in the air until he managed to stabilize himself, drew his bow and some arrows to try to hit it in some way. He infused energy into the arrows and shot several at once, managing to hit both of the beast's eyes. Quickly, he threw his bow and arrows to the ground, grabbed the sword still spinning in the air, and launched himself again at the beast. It was furious, but he was close to one of its arms and managed to pierce it. It screamed and thrashed, ready to catch him, but he didn't hesitate and continued trying to pierce. He ran again toward it, seeing if he could strike from a different angle. He was managing to hit it with his blade, and now he wanted to land before it fell completely to the ground. He thought that the monsters were truly strong. There was no way he could have taken it down without Mo Xiaobei's group. In any case, he wanted to know what that liquid was that it had been drinking before. But it didn't matter if the monster was after it. It must be some kind of treasure. He bottled it up and stored it with his other belongings. He decided to take its eyes to prove that he had taken it down. The blood and heart were also extremely valuable. He had also taken the fangs because they could be worth something. There were actually quite a few items he could collect, and he bottled everything he could, even though he had no idea what any of it was. But it didn't matter. He couldn't let Mo Xiaobei win against him. So with his blade, he cut a piece from the source from which the liquid that the great beast was drinking had come. The points he had earned so far should be more than enough to place him in first place. He was organizing everything in his huge bag, and it was time to get out of there. Then the group that had been fighting the beast earlier arrived, realizing that the eyes, heart, and almost all the blood had been taken. The only thing that was left was the corpse, and they wanted to know what they were going to do now, asking the young master about it. He was so furious to find out who had done it. He wanted to know who dared to steal the 1,000 points that belonged to him and would destroy whoever it was. It had started to rain, and he was hiding, thinking that they had finally arrived there. They were asking the young master if the person who stole his points had probably hidden away. One of them asked the master what they should do now. He instructed them to investigate everyone. They had to find that thief. No way was he going to let them escape easily from this. Yi Tian was realizing that the situation was not easy, so he decided to hide for a while. Using his speed, he got away as quickly as he could before he was caught or seen. He knew they would discover it eventually, but when that would happen would be when he had to turn in the parts he collected for the points calculation at the end of the test. So he had to use the remaining time to focus on cultivation and quickly improve his strength. He looked around and found a place that seemed good for hiding. He wondered how much stronger he could get by drinking that monster's blood, so he decided to drink it to see how it would be and how much stronger he could become. He thought it was probably the most disgusting thing he had ever tasted in his life, but it was fine. It was a small price to pay to get stronger and protect his sister, so he drank as much as he could to become strong in a short time. Meanwhile, his sister sneezed and thought someone was talking about her. She also wondered if her brother was okay, and he was in the test, hiding and cultivating. He realized he was increasing the speed of his cultivation by almost 4 times. It was no surprise that Chendong and the others were getting stronger. It seemed that, besides their own talents, external substances were also necessary. He would have to cultivate as best as he could in the 2.5 days he had left. 3 days had passed, and the competitors were gathered to show their trophies and tally points. They were counting the points, and the girl doing the counting was announcing names and how many points people had. At that moment, the young man arrived wanting his points calculated, which totaled 195 points for Li Yunxing. Their peers found it very good, saying he was perfect. However, his rival arrived, saying it was only 195 points, surprised by just that. He told him that he had really underestimated him, and asked if he thought he was qualified to challenge him with his 200 points. Then Mo Xiaobei asked to sum up his points too, and the girl who was counting looked impressed as he had scored 427. Their friends were amazed, thinking 227 was expected from a guy like Mo Xiaobei. But Li Yunxing's friends thought the difference wasn't that much. It was just 30 points. So they told him he was a bastard and that he had stolen points from others. He said that if he had done that, he would have used his own skills and saw no problem. He was now receiving congratulations for getting 427 points. Definitely, everyone thought that first place belonged to him. But he thought that first place should be above 1,000 points, and everyone wondered how that could be possible. All the students who were alive should have already shown up, so he was walking among that competition. It was significant that Mo Xiaobei would take first place in the test, but they noticed someone approaching from afar to sum up their points as well. The teacher, already losing patience, asked who the last competitor was, and Yi Tian walked calmly to have his points counted. He placed the items he managed to obtain from the monsters and beasts. The girl counting looked at him differently and asked if those were the eyes of a monster. Yi Tian said that was exactly it, and asked her what his total points were. She said he had 1163 points, and congratulated him for obtaining first place in that year's practical test. Another girl came to deliver his rewards, which were 3 bottles of monster blood and a sum of money. His friend was happy and proud, saying he had done a good job. However, there were already people eyeing him, wanting to know how he got so many points. Someone had finally found the thief. He had shown up, and they thought he was one of the delinquents from the 5th Academy. He asked his goons to investigate and find out everything they could about that kid. His friend said he had indeed shown them that the 5th Academy would finally take first place. Then his friend asked if he wasn't happy with Yi Tian since he had brought glory to the 5th Academy. The teacher knew he had offended and enraged a powerful family like the Mo's, and was fearing for his colleague's life. After the teacher's words, his colleague was also fearing for his own life. They asked the top 3 to look at the camera since they were going to take a good picture. But the 3 who were really happy were the first place and the champion. Congratulations were being given to the top 3 participants who had received awards. Mo Xiaobei told the winner that he had the courage to use and steal something that belonged to him. Then he looked back at the guy without showing fear and told him he could say the same. Then the 3rd place was teasing the second, saying he had indeed forgotten what he had said earlier. Mo Xiaobei asked him what he had said, and the 3rd place refreshed his memory, saying that he had stolen points with his own ability, so there were no problems either. The 3rd place wanted to know who was stronger between the 1st place and himself. Yi Tian said that his young master had the time for that and would be happy to fulfill his request. He knew that when he became the target of someone like that, there would be no way to escape. The only way out would be to become stronger, so he would use the challenge. Returning to the city, he was happy because he had arrived home and was calling for his sister Yu. She was delighted to see him and ran to hug him. She asked him why he had taken so long. Then she started walking around him to check if he was really unhurt. She just wanted to take a good look. He, very happy, said he had brought her some gifts. He placed on the table the money he had earned, the bottles of liquid, and a book. She told him that she finally had enough money to get married. He thought she was saying absurd things, that money was for her tuition and life courses. Then, picking up one of those bottles that he had already filled with the beast's liquid, she asked what it was. He said he didn't know and then showed her the treasure book. His sister also wanted to see the treasure book. Looking through it, she was searching for something and suddenly found what the beast was drinking. It was an earth core elixir. That previous snake must have been able to become a monster using the earth core elixir. He never imagined that something he collected so easily would be such a powerful item. His sister held the bottle in her hand, showing that it was indeed that. His brother told her that this thing could improve talents, so it could definitely help her. Since he didn't need it anymore, he was already strong. Moreover, he would become even stronger, so he asked his sister to drink it. But she didn't look like she wanted to drink that strange liquid. She didn't seem to want to drink that liquid and told him that she hadn't awakened yet, and it would be a waste if she drank it. He looked at her talents and realized that her cultivation was weak, but despite that, she had a medium talent. Her talent was in the 2nd class. If she drank the earth core elixir, it would definitely improve, but they didn't know how much. She tried not to drink, saying she could sell it for a lot of money since it was such a precious item. The book mentioned something even more powerful called the earth stone, where the earth core elixir originated, but since he destroyed the place, she couldn't sell it since there was no way to prove it. Pointing at him, she said that it would only lead to murder. Still holding the elixir, she lamented that it was a shame he destroyed everything. He took the bottle from her and said that if she didn't drink it, it would be an even bigger shame. Then he pretended to throw the bottle on the ground while she gasped and opened her mouth, and he poured the contents of the bottle in. She screamed for help, saying that it was homicide. After he made her drink, he asked her what it tasted like, but she was still coughing because the taste wasn't good. But when she saw her powers reacting, she thought it was very good. Then he wanted to assess what had happened to her powers because her cultivation talent was still in the 2nd class in the book, which was wrong. She told him that she was very tired and would cook for him as soon as she woke up. He told her it was fine and to go ahead and rest a bit. He found it strange that nothing had happened, so he thought it best to wait a bit to see if the elixir would start to take effect. However, An hour later, the girl began cultivating in her sleep, and he noticed a very strong wave of talent. The reactions from the elixir she took while sleeping made him decide to look at her status bar, and her talent was medium, but her ice ability. He was pleased because her talent was now medium, which meant she had risen 2 levels, a continuation of medium talent but a rare talent of ice. Yi would definitely become a high-level warrior in the future, so he thought he was getting prepared for Mo Xiaobei. He felt ready and wouldn't lose to him. He was also drinking more beast blood to become even more powerful. He thought the taste of that was even worse. He wanted to eat that when he was in the cave, but he could finally eat now. He wondered how much stronger he could become with the blood of a mid-level furious beast, so he would try that with physical training. He was very pleased because it was 8 times better. The effects of the blood of a mid-level furious beast were terrible. If he had enough blood, he thought it was a shame, but he only had 2 more bottles and was already thinking about what he should do. 10 days later, at the 5th Academy of the Forest, he was sitting meditating to increase his cultivation. Suddenly, his friend arrived running and shouting his name. Yi Tian asked him why all the fuss. He said it was about Mo Xiaobei and that he was here, so he got up and began to look around. A friend explained that he had retreated to reach the warrior level, saying that he was definitely nurturing malicious intentions and would certainly come after him for revenge. Yi Tian calmed down when he realized that Mo Xiaobei was not behind him to challenge him, but had taken a leave. He was calm since he had taken a look at Mo Xiaobei's talent, and he also had a medium talent, with a friend trying to say that if his enemy became a warrior, he would step on his friend like an ant. He also said he was a disciple with a great background with many resources, but he was just one of those guys with 3 bottles of beast blood. Yi Tian didn't have that anymore since he had already run out, so he said since he was a good person, he would take care of him and his sister too. He was thinking he only had the result of the striped snake blood in the heart. When he used that, he thought he would reach the higher level than apprentice. It could be a step away from becoming a warrior, but it was possible to achieve it. With the speed talent and the knife talent, he would definitely be able to fight against a warrior. Meanwhile, the family showed from outside a very beautiful castle, and someone arriving and breaking the door of the place, congratulating someone for reaching the warrior level. Everyone there wanted him to wait as a warrior, and now he was truly monstrous. Still at the Love Residence, which looked like a giant, well-structured castle, his servant was happy and proud that he had managed to reach the warrior level. Meanwhile, his maids were adjusting and fitting his clothes to look good on his body. He found it strange that his father was there. He said it seemed that he had finally managed to become a warrior. He really was his son. Mo Xiaobei's father was the foundation of the family's wealth, one of the 10 elders of the Elder Association at the medium elite warrior level. He placed his hand on his son's arm and said that the son hadn't done badly at all. Then the son told him not to worry, he would never embarrass the family. The father said he knew what the elder had said, even to reward him personally, and he said it was all thanks to him and the help of the elders. He asked the butler to check if his dishes had been prepared in the kitchen after that, as he said he would go himself. The father told the son to remember to eat later, as he had prepared the favorite foods to celebrate. Mo Xiaobei remained silent, waiting for his father to leave. As soon as he departed, he asked his guard if he had taken care of the thing he left with him before isolating himself. His guard, Costas, said yes, that the brat had no peace and nobody to count on could play with him as much as he wanted. He even thought he had someone powerful supporting him. If that was the case, then he only needed to find someone to exterminate. Someone came and said that the base was different from the jungle. If they killed as they wished, it didn't matter how powerful the family was, there would still be problems. And who allowed the use of the family name to kill? He ordered them to look for a shadow killer, an assassin of the shadows, who could know. And he continued drinking beast's blood as if it were an afternoon juice. But to hire a shadow assassin, they needed at least 1 million, all for a poor kid who didn't even know if it would be worth it. Then the young man said that a servant was just a servant, and they thought with a poor mentality. He told his guard that the base was so vast, yet only a few families managed to prosper while others became slaves, and he asked if he knew why that was. He explained that it was because they discovered a genius among the poor. They would soon kill that immediately. So the 5th Academy did not exist to cultivate talents but to eliminate them. His servant was quite surprised and disappointed to hear that. And the rich young man continued saying that conquering the weak was how the world worked. At the 5th Academy in the Grove, there he was again training his physical skills, jumping up with his sword and cutting down various trees. He seemed to be noting a difference in his attacks. They appeared more precise. But now he was worried because it seemed like it was going to rain just as he was about to return home. There was the boy heading home alone, passing through one of those suspicious alleys. It seemed to be a shortcut to get home faster since it was raining, and he didn't want to get wet for too long. But looking up, he noticed a status window and was intrigued by what that could be. He thought a lot until he managed to visualize the status window, saw that it was human, and that he had a second-class talent, which was a beginner shadow talent. He could also see when the person behind the status window charged at him to try to deal damage. Everything happened very quickly, but thanks to Jade and now his speed ability, he was able to block that attack. And the two began to fight, but he was not just any person. He had already accumulated talents and was cultivating to become stronger. He asked who was there because he knew he was not alone. Someone was coming for his life. And now the man revealed himself, no longer hiding. He was an assassin and had come to reap his life. Under the rain, he asked who was there, and the two began that fierce fight. The one who answered said he was there to take his life. The young man asked if he was an assassin hired by Mo Xiao Bei, but he found it strange because he had already become a warrior. He could easily go and fight him himself, so why was he choosing the method of honest names? But the guy didn't want much conversation. He just wanted to do his job as best as he could and get out of there quickly. And the clash continued. The boy was not that weak. He blocked, dodged, and sometimes even countered, while his opponent appeared and disappeared. It seemed that his talent was of the shadows, a type of power that remained invisible. Even so, he was dueling with that somewhat invisible guy. When things got tough, he would become invisible, and when it was good for him, he was visible. The invisible guy wanted to know how a boy could be so fast. Yi Tian said it was now his turn to attack and charged at that guy with everything he had. The fight was for his life, so he couldn't hold back. But whenever the situation became complicated, the guy would become invisible. The young man concluded that talent would be very difficult for an ordinary person to deal with, but against him, it was completely useless. Using his incredible speed, he was able to keep up with the movements of the invisible guy, and since it was raining, it wasn't hard to hit him. He found it impossible. Even an elite warrior wouldn't be able to see through his talent. He asked the young man how he managed to do it. Then he asked him to first answer who had sent him there after him. The assassin, grabbing his sword again, said he would tell when he succeeded on his last breath, and he tried to find him again, thinking this time would be better and easier. But the young man's speed skills were incredible, and he managed to catch the boy who kept becoming invisible. And he said he would ask once more who had sent him there. He said he was an apprentice in the sky, stronger than he had encountered, and angrily said he would tell. He said it was Mo Xiao Bei, and after saying that, he fell to the ground under that rain. Yi Tian was already getting tired of that guy chasing him. It didn't even make sense. So taking advantage of the assassin lying on the ground under the rain, he decided he wanted to keep his talent too. And he began to extract a copy of the talent. The copy of the shadow talent was successfully completed. And now he had one more talent to be able to combat whoever tried to catch him. His extract window referred to him as human, and the cultivation talent ranked as medium, ramp speed novice talent, and blade ranked as medium, task of shadows ranked novice. His talent in the shadows was his. Now he was becoming stronger and stronger. Under all that rain, he was now taking care of the assassin's body. He had made a sort of hole to put him in and even covered it with some stones. But he had to do it right in case no one discovered it one day. He thought that humans should not be like fallen leaves, left to move in the wind and rain, and he promised himself that he would have a life. The way a man should live in a world like that would be like the wind and the rain, never like a fallen leaf. With every talent he copied, he felt more confident that everything would turn out well. On his way home, he took a shower to clean himself from everything in some way. After showering, he put on a t-shirt and took a look at how his new situation was now after acquiring so many talents. Everything was perfect. He sat on his couch and said it was good. He looked at the table and saw that all of those were gifts from Li Xian. The two swords were probably primordial weapons. One sword was completely ruined, but these were practically intact. A white gold card with 100 added up to a total of 3.5 million. Satisfied, he stored what he had earned in his wallet, thanking Mo Xiao Bei for the gifts and and the money he had sent through that assassin. There was also a book titled Blade of Shadows, which was a bronze-level knife technique, a tier for blades, including iron, bronze, silver, and gold. It was good. The blade techniques could block the full power of someone else's blade talent, which was exactly what he needed. He would learn and test himself, so he started reading chapter 1 in his room. It was raining heavily, and he thought about something. His sister still hadn't returned home. Since Xiaobei had sent someone to assassinate him, he might already know everything about him. So, he was eager to look for his sister, which meant she could be in danger. He didn't even want to think that there was a chance his sister could be killed. So, he jumped out of the window and took off with speed, wishing for his sister's safety. In the city center, at an ordinary high school, he descended from the skies to look for his sister. He quickly began searching, shouting her name and asking where she was. This was just an ordinary school. People with talents couldn't just go in there and kill students. But someone like Mo Xiaobei wouldn't follow or accept the basic rules of social warriors. Then someone pressed something against his stomach and told him not to move. Immediately, he jumped up, ready to attack that person. Before attacking, he decided to remove the person's hood to see who it was, asking them not to move. It was just his sister with an umbrella that she had used to poke his stomach. He asked her what she was doing and why she took so long, as she had warned him that the cleanup shift that day was cleaning all the classrooms. She asked why he hadn't taken an umbrella with him or put on shoes since he was all wet. He said he had forgotten because he had left in a hurry. She wanted to know how he had made that cool move. But he was right. Both he and his sister were being watched, and Mo Xiaobei himself was keeping an eye on them. And he wanted to know why that guy was still alive, and he didn't seem satisfied at all. On their way back home, they stopped at a snack bar and bought a treat to eat. The two returned home peacefully under the same umbrella, enjoying their snacks. The sister asked if he would like to have dinner since she would be cooking that night. He replied that it could be her signature dish, slices of cooked meat. While they were satisfied and happy, they were being followed. But after accumulating so many talents, he could perfectly sense that someone was tailing them. Yu was excited because she had just finished preparing their dinner and was setting the table, and the car that had been following them was still down there in the rain, watching them. The next day, at Yu's school, she was in class and would be the next to solve a question. She was a good student, and now her brother was in the neighboring building, keeping watch to ensure nothing happened to her. He had been doing the same routine for 3 consecutive days, and that car was still monitoring them. He thought they had lost their trail, as they were even considering harming his sister. From above, he saw that the car was leaving again. He had to follow it. So he traveled a long way through the city behind the car to follow it. He found it strange where it had chosen to go. It was a warehouse, and he saw that Mo Xiaobei was there. Just seeing him made him furious. However, that guy was preoccupied with other matters. He was beating up someone who owed him money and couldn't pay at that moment. The man, after talking to the rich guy, swore he would pay as soon as he got the money and pleaded for him to let him go. Mo Xiaobei warned that if he left it for another day, it would be double. After all, his money didn't grow on trees. Sitting there with a nasty look, he asked if he didn't think it was right. The man who had taken a beating warned that his interest rates were too high and that he couldn't manage, but as soon as he could, he would pay. One of his lackeys informed him that someone had arrived, but with the look he shot at him, that employee was in deep trouble. He asked him if he had any news about the shadow assassin. His lackey, approaching where he was sitting, said he couldn't contact that shadow assassin and would try to reach him again through someone else. Yi Tian was now sure it was indeed Mo Xiaobei who had hired the assassin to take him down. But he was tired of sitting. He stood up and walked over to the guy who was in debt, and said that people thought rich descendants like him were easy to fool. Stepping on him, he said it wouldn't be easy to pull a fast one on him because, besides being rich, he was very strong. His employee, who couldn't deal with the assassin, said he wouldn't use him to lure him in. He had always been loyal. Another lackey noted the heartbeat of the guy who had taken some hits and told him he was low on life. Then Mo Xiaobei told his lackey to take care of Tian's sister, asking if he knew how to handle her, and ordered him to get rid of her. The lackey said he was planning to trust this to a friend who had just gotten out of jail, but things there could get difficult. At that moment, his young master approached him. However, the servant said he didn't need to worry because he would handle it. But he didn't want any mistakes, and to ensure his servant understood, he punched him in the stomach as a lesson. The man fallen at his feet asked why he had done that. The young Mo warned that it was the punishment for not doing the job right. At that moment, Tian drew his primordial weapon weapon and prepared for a duel. When he sensed the imminent danger, he saw that Tian was there for a serious fight and seemed eager for it. So he went down straight to that guy who wanted to end his sister's life, and he finished him off. All the henchmen were worried because he was already lying there lifeless. One of them noticed that the shadow talent hiding the body was startled to see that it was no longer with Li Siyuan. That monstrous figure with its two blades walked calmly toward him. Yi Tian needed to eliminate all of them and leave no trace that he had been there. But the henchman was only worried about how he had acquired the shadow talent. He told the boy that he had investigated him and found that he was nothing but a failure with a bit of talent. How could he exterminate his young master with one move? He asked where Li Siyuan was, but the young man wasn't interested in giving explanations. He just moved his neck from side to side to relieve the tension he was feeling, and he turned his eyes back to that guy who wouldn't stop talking. He charged at him to eliminate that burden too. The guy screamed that he couldn't be exterminated, but that was exactly what he did. He found that guy who talked too much on the ground, and he threw some of Li Siyuan's belongings to shift the blame onto the Shadow Clan. Looking at all the fallen, he said that he wasn't someone who simply waited to be slaughtered like a sheep. It was a pity that they chose to mess with the wrong target. He walked away calmly as if he were just taking a stroll. Then he picked up extreme speed to go home. Hours later, at that same place, several people were arriving, and his father wanted to know who the scoundrels were that did this. Someone had executed his son, and it wouldn't go unpunished. Someone found something and handed it to the elder, and said that the culprit could probably be a shadow assassin. He thought it inhumane to hire a shadow assassin. Everyone was calling the elder Mo Zhangqing, the great elder of the wealthy Mo family from the maritime base, the only great warrior of this family. Suddenly the great elder was there. He was a warrior of elite apprentice rank and a Grand Master warrior. Elder No trembled just at the sight of the Great Elder. He told the Great Elder that his son was dead and mentioned that he was the prodigy of his family. The Great Elder said he already knew and asked him to stand up. Then he told the Great Elder that Xiao Bei had just returned from the warrior realm and had just finished his celebration banquet. But he met as miserable an end as this. The Great Elder recognized that for the younger generation, if the No family produced a second warrior, their position in the maritime base would increase significantly. The elder said that his son's death could not have been in vain. He asked for revenge for Xiao Bei and then handed over the evidence that the henchman had found at the scene. The Great Elder took it and was thinking if it was really this second shadow. Suddenly he remembered that there was a family that held a grudge against them. Holding that piece of fabric that had been left with the name Shadow, the Great Elder positioned himself in the sunlight and saw that there was a symbol in the middle. It was the symbol of the Iron Tooth. Now he knew who to seek for revenge. The next day at school, Yi Tian wanted to know more about the Iron Tooth base, so he asked his friend who knew more about these things. His friend said that the Iron Tooth base was much stronger than the maritime base, and that the elders of the Mo family suspected that some families in the maritime base were secretly working with the Iron Tooth base. Rumors said that Mo Xiaobei, who had just reached the warrior level, was also killed by him. They even decapitated him. Tian remained calm because it seemed that no one suspected it was him. His friend continued saying that the first person Mo Xiaobei would go after reaching the warrior level was definitely Yi Tian. Yi Tian had left a handkerchief with the word shadow behind on purpose to throw off the Mo family, but that elder discovered the symbol of the Iron Tooth base on the handkerchief. Had he accidentally revealed the conspiracy of the Iron Tooth base, or was it just that old man making things up? The next day, at 4:00 a.m., Yi Tian had woken up early and was on tiptoe preparing not to wake his sister. He was sneaking out when his sister noticed that her brother was leaving and asked where he was going at that hour. She wanted to know if he had woken up with her. He told her that he was going to train in nature to improve his powers. She didn't want him to go alone since he had returned a few days ago and asked if he couldn't skip going or go with a friend. He told you not to worry about him and to wait for him at home. Then he set off for his training, but before he left, his sister hugged him and asked him to come back soon. He assured her that he would be back safely soon. At his training location, he was improving his movements to become more agile and fast. People said that advanced level ferocious beasts stayed there, but with his current powers, he could only hunt low-level beasts secretly. This time was his chance to reach the warrior level. It was then that he heard an earthquake as the ground shook slightly. But when he paid attention, it wasn't an earthquake, it was a ferocious beast, and it was a large one, finishing off a smaller beast. Looking at its status window, he realized it was the Iron Cow ferocious beast. Its blood was weak, and its defensive talent was second class. He thought that an Iron Cow with second class defensive talent wasn't bad. He had just been noticed by that animal, which was now charging at him. So this could be a good time. He set aside his equipment, and in the blink of an eye, charged toward that Iron Cow. He threw his sword at the animal to see if he could cause greater damage. He analyzed it a bit from above to see if he had a chance, and with a strong thirst for talent, he descended with full force onto what would be his new talent. He realized that it had strong defense. It threw him into the air with just a block around its body and a fierce roar. He was taking quite a beating, but he wouldn't give up because that talent interested him greatly. Just thinking about obtaining it made him smile. Then he charged at the beast, which also had a fierce gleam in its eyes just like him. The Iron Cow wasn't interested in losing so easily. It was definitely much stronger than he had imagined. But for someone willing to obtain that second-class defensive talent, he should know that it wouldn't be easy. So, standing still, admiring that creature with the talent he wanted, he charged at it to capture it. The beast also prepared, and he made a movement so fast to try to attack it. He thought it didn't matter what creature it was. He knew exactly where their weak points were. The cow was furious, its mouth open in his direction. He adjusted one of his swords in the air because he knew exactly what to do. Now close to it, he would attack its eyes. He positioned himself in the air to attack but couldn't pierce them, as that cow was no ordinary cow, and its eyes couldn't be pierced easily. When he insisted, his sword shattered into pieces. It was just a second-class defensive talent, and yet it was already so strong. Since the cow had also prepared for that attack and his turn had passed, it struck him with great force. It sent him crashing into some rocks a little further ahead while keeping its shield active. He lay among the stones, now realizing that it was a lot more powerful than he initially thought, and he wanted much more now. But it was a shame because the cooldown period for copying the talent was 16 days. That armored cow should be weaker than the silver moon wolf. However, it was stronger than that violent scaled snake. But its talent was great. He just needed to find a weak point to attack strongly. He thought he might have a chance to win, so he motivated the talent of shadows. He charged at it, now armed with only one of his swords, launching several powers in its direction, but the shield was strong enough to block all of them. The talent of shadows, at that moment, was so useless that he didn't even realize he was attacking. Not even the sword talent was effective against that creature. He was still searching for a weak point. Every creature had one, and that animal should too. That defensive talent had no openings, and then he noticed something strange. Its protection was weak in one spot, and it seemed he had found its weak point located at its hindquarters. So, he prepared to attack that animal's weak point. He used the dark blade, positioning himself close to the weak point, aimed, and used the shadow thrust to achieve the effect he needed. The animal screamed loudly as he had managed to hit its weak point, and it seemed his hunch was correct. He already had access to experience, and knew he wouldn't be able to pierce the animal while it was alive. He was already collecting its belongings, and again, he was filling his bottles to obtain more elixirs over time. Regardless of how powerful the talent was, it meant nothing if it were lifeless. That cowhide must be very valuable. Its eyes and testicles would fetch a lot, but the most valuable part would probably be the horns. So he decided to cut those off to take with him, and he left with his bag full of valuable things. He needed to find a quiet place to begin cultivating. He returned to the cave he was accustomed to whenever he needed to cultivate or hunt. The blood showed fresh and peanuts from his sister's mark. He was counting on them while crossing into the martial warrior realm. Then he started taking all that elixir from the bottles and eating all those peanuts. After being well stocked and with renewed strength, he began to cultivate, noticing that his energy was now at another level. 20 days later, he was still in that cave and felt twice as strong. He was quite wild now, and his powers began to draw the attention of people. People passed by near where he was, and there was a huge flame, causing the girls to start looking. They realized that this was someone crossing into the martial warrior realm in such a deserted place. One of them found it interesting. She was a mysterious girl wearing a brooch from a martial pavilion. He was still in the cave and could feel that intense flow of power running through his body. It was incredible, the martial warrior realm. He looked back and saw the bottles of the armored bull elixir. 20 days had passed, so the cooldown time should have ended. He was going to copy the defensive talent, but he noticed in his status that it could no longer be copied since the target was no longer complete. Now that he had discovered he had such a limitation, if he had known this earlier, he wouldn't have cut it into so many pieces. From above, the two were watching the boy. One of them asked if the lady thought it was the boy who had killed the monster. She knew he had just crossed into the martial warrior realm, but that monster had been dead for a long time. It didn't make sense that the monster had been slain. He was still a martial apprentice, and it was impossible for him to have killed that monster alone. Even as a mere martial apprentice, he dared to explore that mountain. He was quite bold. He had removed his clothes and shoes, as he had been on the mountain for 20 days, and needed to take a bath before going home. He was preparing to enter the water, and the ladies were still watching him do something indecent. Then he jumped into the water to take his bath. At the martial market, the baseline was a large place with many people selling things. It seemed to be the biggest store in the market, and it was precisely the store where the girl had the brooch in her hair. He decided to take a look at that place first. When the girls passed by, they noticed that this was the guy from the mountain. One of the girls who had been on the mountain called out his sister's name to see if it would grab his attention. Upon hearing his sister's name, he looked at that exact moment and called out for his little sister. However, he didn't see anyone other than the two girls who had been watching him when he was in the cave. Then she realized that it had worked and she was calling her. He thought there was no chance his sister would be there in that place. He kept looking at the girl and realized that she was simply a genius. Her status window was magnificent, high-ranking cultivation talent, medium-ranking sword talent. Her speed was novice, but that he had in spades. Then her friend asked that boy who he was calling little sister. She told him that he had guts for a beggar. He didn't like being called a beggar, and even started smelling himself to see if he had a bad odor, remembering that he had just bathed. Then he was called by his friend, who smiled and said that she had let slip such words, so she approached her friend, who taught her the right way to apologize to him was just to repeat the words she had said. So Xiaoyu leaned a little and said, "Esteemed martial warrior, I apologize for having offended you." She also mentioned that her lady had taught her a lesson. The young man found that talk of lady and Miss strange, but he let it go. A little while later, she pulled him by the arm and said that her lady needed to deal with some matters and that she would return first. Then she told him that she would come back crazily and that, to compensate, she would pay double the price for whatever he sold. He found it strange for the girl to say such things, but the idea of double the price intrigued him. She led him to a place, and upon entering, he noticed that the items there were of excellent quality. As expected from the largest store in the martial market, he was offered a cup of tea. The girl who had caught his attention by mentioning her sister was now talking to him as if they were great friends. She was observing the items he had, a fancy steel armor from an ox and a hide, counting their worth. She told him that it all added up to 200,000, and since they were paying double, he could receive 400. He almost made a deal. He said he was closing it, thinking he had managed to get easy money. He placed it on the table and said those were the 4 white cards, each containing 100,000 inside, asking her to keep them safe. He was thinking that if his sister saw that much money, she would surely be very happy. Xiaoyu also said that her lady requested a reward and that if he wanted, he could buy everything at half price. He said that if that was the case, he would accept the offer, but those items were too expensive. It was no wonder given the cultivation of artists. He kept thinking about how ordinary citizens could afford such high costs. Looking at the book, he said he would start by buying that, and she told him to wait a bit. She said that with the discount, everything came to 785 after rounding. He could get everything for 700. So he paid with the golden card that contained 1,000,000, which he had taken from the assassin. She handed him the change, thanked him, and asked him to please keep everything safe. Another martial pavilion so grand, offering so many benefits, definitely didn't seem to fit the word. He was just a poor boy who didn't know what he had seen. They weren't going to say anything more, so he was about to leave. When he placed his hand on the door to exit, Miss Xiaoyu asked him to wait a moment. He thought that as expected, nothing was that simple, so he turned and asked what it was. She said that her lady was the supervisor of the Maciel Pavilion and wanted to meet him if he had time time for the occasion. He said yes and asked her to please show him the way. She pointed to the stairs. He climbed up and the girl was having tea. The blonde lady introduced him, saying he was the martial artist. When he looked at that girl, he thought she looked very much like someone. Then she said that she would like to introduce herself as Lin Hai That Ling. As soon as she took his hand, her talent was immediately copied successfully by him. He seemed quite excited about the talent he had just copied. He was invited to have tea with her and was informed that anyone who stepped onto the second floor of the martial pavilion would be considered a valuable guest. He, Yi Tian, was an ordinary bird, had no connection with those prestigious families. So how valuable could he be? She replied that he was right, but his value resided in his common birth. She explained that she meant it was in his independence. He thought she was so calm, unlike Yi Yo, who was more cheerful and loved to smile. He was offered a bit more tea. The girl said she would be direct with him. Her goal in inviting him for tea was for him to understand the invitation she would make. Then she placed a red cross on the table and asked him to join the martial pavilion. When he saw that girl, he could only think of his sister because they were both very similar. How could he say no to that face, regardless of whether it was his sister's or not? He told her that there was something he didn't understand. He said that Manhwa was a basic necessity, so its power was limitless, and he was sure that external bases would never lack talents. He also mentioned that he was still just a novice martial warrior. She explained that the external bases were getting broader. I won't lack talent, but they always needed her. This made sense to him. Despite having the appearance of a little girl, her words encompassed the whole picture, as expected of someone from the base, but his sister could never say those words. Xiao Yu was asking him why he was avoiding it. It was a great opportunity for him. She continued saying that even disciples from powerful families wanting to join didn't meet Milady's standards. He knew she was right. It was a good opportunity for him, but for any organization, it would mean he would be trapped. So before finding a way to deal with that, he needed to be as independent as possible. Then she realized that he was indeed avoiding it. She looked at him and asked, quite curious, why he was avoiding. He found it hard to say no, looking at her face, and she insisted that he do it, say no while looking at her. He said he couldn't put it into words. He mentioned the rumors about the invasion of the Iron Claws, and because of that, he had regained his peaceful days. He didn't want to become like them. He didn't want to serve people like them. She asked if, in his eyes, she was also like them. Then he told her that she was not like them in his eyes. She proposed that they observe them for a while before he responded. She said he didn't need to answer right away. She would have plenty of patience. Then they stared at each other for a brief moment. He left the market as a martial warrior, and he would like to know what a martial warrior was and also what talent was. What he wondered was if the martial warriors who possessed talents still remembered the founding missions of the martial warriors. The martial warriors did not exist to protect people. He still remembered when his ball fell and he asked a martial warrior to return it. He only ensured with his feet and put in as much effort as possible. So why did they need to tolerate the oppression of some martial warriors beyond the fear of beasts? After that, that martial warrior threw the ball with great force. It wasn't enough. He had to become even stronger. His position had to be high. He needed to get even stronger. In his status window appeared the talent that had been copied from Milady, asking if he would like to merge or not. All he knew was that he needed to go further, so he merged. After opting to merge, he decided to go home. Upon arriving, he greeted his sister Yu. She was happy to see that her brother had returned and, as always, ran to hug him. She told him that he was finally back. She said he seemed to have become much stronger in those 20 days he had been away. He told her that now he was a martial warrior, and she was very happy to hear that. Now in the Yi family, there was a martial warrior. That news was wonderful for her. He thought she was silly because when her talents awakened, she too would become a martial warrior, and he would continue to help her increase her talent when he got compatible items. He was always keeping an eye on her power status, which indicated that her cultivated talent was at the intermediate level, and her ice power was ranked low since it was still dormant. She called her martial warrior brother to get a haircut and look more stylish. She said his hair looked like that of a beggar, and now that he was a martial warrior, he needed to take a bit more care. She held his shoulder and told him to be quiet. He agreed with his hairdresser's sister and said that the usual cut would be great. She said she could handle that. It was the only style she knew how to cut anyway. Time really flies. Yu had been cutting his hair since their parents had died. At first, she was even afraid to cut his hair because she thought it could be solved by going to the hospital. He told her it was just a little cut. There was no need to go to the hospital, and he wanted money. It wasn't a big deal. He would be fine. Taking care of his short hair and the wound was enough. She cried and said that at least her sister had the skill of the immortal jellyfish, and he kept wanting to know what skill that was. She asked if he had forgotten the story he read to her about the immortal jellyfish, which has healing abilities. When they were injured, it healed almost instantly. Such things were made for foolish children who still believed in these things. She got angry and said he didn't understand the truth. She was saying it was true. He knew she cared a lot about him. When his talent awakened, he could gain healing power. Then he would never get hurt again, and he could protect her even more. Then he remembered the immortal jellyfish and moved just a little, and his sister got mad and told him not to move because it would ruin the cut. She yelled at him, asking where he was going since she hadn't finished cutting yet. He didn't care and ran off. He grabbed the illustrated treasure book he had bought last time, looking for the immortal jellyfish. He found that the immortal jellyfish was a watertight beast with leather talent located in the Lake of Death. She followed him to see what he was whispering about because he was speaking softly, and he thought that if he could copy the healing talent, he wouldn't have to fear getting hurt in the future, and his sister wouldn't have to worry anymore. His sister then appeared and asked if that wasn't something only found in fairy tales. She reminded him that such things were inventions for foolish children. He closed the book and told her she was wrong. Some stories were real. She said that was great, but he should go back there because she was going to finish cutting his hair. He was looking back and forth at that book, researching how strong the body techniques that only initial warriors could practice could be. He knew that mainly fortified skin was used by intermediate martial nets, fortified muscles by martial warriors, and advanced states by fortified bones. He became interested in one and started cultivating. He couldn't know without comparing the absorption rates. The past ones had been so slow. He was wondering what the effect would be of drinking a bottle of intermediate beast juice. So he drank all that beast juice. The reactions in his body were almost instantaneous. The absorption rate tripled, and that was great. First, he would cultivate at home. When the cooldown time was up, he would head straight to the Lake of Death. The cooldown time for copying talent was 30 days. He would find the immortal jellyfish and copy her healing talent. He thought this while they already had that sinister face. In the martial pavilion, he decided to return and was well received again, this time by Xiaoyu. Looking at him, she recognized him as that scrap collector. She walked up to him, greeting him and asking if the martial warrior was there, suggesting he should have come to look for the lady, not the other way around. He replied that he was there to buy something. She observed and thought that indeed clothes make the man. He looked quite handsome this time. She apologized for that and said that if he wanted to buy something, he could follow her. He asked if she also had the map of the Lake of Death, and she said she did. She asked him to wait a moment while she looked for it. She found it and handed it to him. He thought he would be able to copy some good talents there, and asked how much it cost. She said it was 100,000, so he handed her one of the cards he had won there last time. She observed that he must be going somewhere new to collect scrap again. But the lady had mentioned the day before that the Lake of Death was filled with terrible aquatic beasts, and even elite martial warriors had difficulty surviving there. She hoped nothing would happen to him. With the map in hand, he set off for the Lake of Death. The Lake of Death was a piece of truly barren and troubled land. Looking at that scene, he liked it, and thought he could copy several precious talents there. It seemed that place had been deserted for a long time, and the strange atmosphere there made it feel like danger could arise at any moment. Something caught his attention. As he turned, he widened his eyes and realized there was movement in that water. He noticed there were beasts. He would become invisible and observe for now, so he activated the shadow talent. He was watching, but that thing was also that. Then he noticed that from the bottom of that lake, people were emerging. Looking closer, he saw it was a man and that woman. They were running from a huge beast. The man thought they wouldn't make it. The beast snapped its mouth shut and barely didn't devour the two. That was a beast of maximum rank and was enormous. Yi Tian became extremely excited when he saw the beast of maximum rank. The man said he would hold it. The girl seemed tired, but she had to run away because more beasts were behind her. The man shouted for her to be careful because he said there were more beasts. At that moment, She was already running at full speed to escape those animals. Tian saw no other choice but to help. With his speed, he went to face those beasts, looking to help the girl. Milady was running away because there were fierce beasts behind her. The man accompanying her was asking her to be careful. She was dodging and being careful not to drop the box she was holding. She used the secret technique and launched it, and a weapon appeared, growing larger. But the beasts were also appearing, and they were coming in large numbers. Jumping up, she intended to deal with that two-headed beast, who was observing the entire fight, was impressed by the girl's power. He realized that the secret art she was using was something very strong. He was careless. This was not a fight that a novice martial warrior could handle. She was doing very well with her acrobatic jumps and was evading the beasts that were appearing to attack. Yu Ling was an elite martial warrior at the top of her realm. After activating her secret technique, her power became similar to that of a great warrior. Even 10 of him wouldn't be enough to defeat her. Then he noticed that the man was being attacked by the beast that had already bitten his leg. The man shouted for the lady to run away, as the beast was already swallowing him. He used his secret technique but said it wouldn't last long. The item was more important, or else the sacrifice of the brothers who submerged would be in vain. She was upset but seemed to have to leave since 7 people had died submerged. He was evaluating what kind of treasure that could be to go through so much trouble to obtain it. The duration of the secret technique had ended, and now the monsters were attacking her. She was weakened, and her treasure was too. She was on the ground, weakened, and noticed that someone was nearby. He passed by her and went to see what treasure it was. She asked him not to touch it. He told her to stop whining. He wasn't going to steal it. Then the monsters appeared again, and he found that bunch annoying. He asked the lady for permission and picked her up in his arms. On her chest, he placed her treasure box and said he thought it would be safer to find a cave to hide and asked what she thought. He said that if she didn't respond, he would consider it a yes. He left there at full speed with the lady in his arms. He took her to the cave where he was used to cultivating. He took off his coat and placed it over her to protect her from the cold. He observed how much she looked like his sister, except for a mole she had on her face. He even ran his hand over it to see if it was dirt, but realized it wouldn't come off. Then he noticed that the mole was real. Inside the cave, he observed that she still hadn't woken up. He was wondering how much longer she would remain unconscious. He thought she was waking up. She looked a bit dazed. She had used her powers for too long and fainted from exhaustion. Looking at him, she asked if he had saved her. He said it was by chance that he was passing nearby. She also thanked him for putting his shirt on her to warm her. She was thinking that he had gone to the Lake of Death alone, which was quite impressive, and she almost recruited someone like him for the martial pavilion. She then created something very bright in her hands. He asked what she was doing, as it would blind him. She laughed at his face and said he looked all scared. She explained that it was a light stone that could store and emit light, so it could be said to be a lamp. He asked her if she learned that out of nowhere, and she said he was very interested in it. She said she would talk more about it after drinking some healing potion, and she was drinking the potion in front of him, wondering if it was some kind of special talent. But among her talents, there was nothing special. After she took that healing elixir, she went to cultivate. He had been in that state for some time, so much so that he got tired and went to sleep. She warned him that she had finished healing and he could get up. She asked him if he wanted to know where that zipper was coming from. She took the box she had defended with her life and others and asked him to notice that the bronze chest was bigger than a bag, but it fit perfectly inside the bag, so he understood it wasn't a special talent. It was a special type of artifact. She said it was exactly that. She asked if he liked it, and if he wanted to learn how to use them, saying that if he wanted, he just had to join the pavilion, and she would take him to the main base. He showed disinterest, and said he was tired and wanted to sleep. Then he settled on the ground inside that cave to take a nap and rest a bit. She realized what he was doing and thought he was a jerk, but that she would manage to recruit him one day. He was truly not pretending to be uninterested. He was genuinely disinterested. For him, it was just a bag with a portion, nothing more. But the problem was that she had just caused a mess at the Lake of Death, so he wouldn't stay calm anytime soon. The day had dawned. With all that thinking, he ended up truly falling asleep. When he got up, he noticed that she had gone and left him behind. Now he was alone again in the cave. He realized she had left something there and went to see what it was. The red box contained the deep training manual of medium rank, 10 bottles of high rank monster juice, and 10 gold cards worth 1 million each. He thought she had left left that for him, so he felt grateful. Those items were enough for him to become an elite martial warrior. So in that case, there was a change of plans. That's what he thought while drinking the beast juice. He would look for the deadly jellyfish after he became an elite martial warrior, since he was very happy with the elixirs she had left for him. 4 months later, he was still in the cave. Now he was practically living there. His things and belongings were there, and he was cultivating more and more. It was then that he felt ready, and that was the sign that he had moved to the next martial stage. It was so strong that it shook the cave where he was now covered in dust. Looking at his hands, he realized that he had reached the elite martial warrior realm. He was overflowing with power. He had finally reached the level he wanted and put on his coat. He was ready for the hunt. Upon his return to the Lake of Death, he observed that there were 11 new graves. It crossed his mind that the number of graves was linked to the beast in the lake, which would leave no trace, not even bones. He believed she had made the grave before leaving and found it very kind. His gaze fell upon an umbrella resting on another grave, reminding him of how they had used it to dive. Picking it up, he checked if it still worked. It seemed intact. Standing under the rain with the umbrella, he noticed it was creating waterproof air bubbles. To his surprise, he realized he was surrounded by a waterproof air bubble large enough to provide him with oxygen. What a useful item, he thought. The wind had already carried him above the lake, but he remained protected inside the bubble. How could it enter the water without any issues? With determination, he launched himself at full speed into the lake, plunging with great force. With the umbrella in hand, his movements were quicker underwater. He activated his shadow talent. Suddenly, something resembling a status window appeared above his head, warning him of a tiger claw fish with a medium rank innate talent. The sight surprised him, as that beast was of intermediate rank. Staying as quiet as possible, he managed to avoid being discovered by the creature. He continued his descent, eager to see what else the lake held. At what seemed to be the deepest part of the lake, he moved without worry, trusting the bubble created by the umbrella to keep him safe. His search for immortal jellyfish proved successful, as he found them there. However, to his dismay, they were far from friendly, launching an unexpected attack. After recovering, he checked his status window, revealing that the species was an immortal jellyfish with a beginner rank innate talent and a maximum rank healing talent. This encounter was crucial. He needed that healing talent to enhance his own abilities. Realizing that capturing the jellyfish would be no easy feat, he decided to strike first, throwing his sword at it. The jellyfish retaliated, and although one of its tentacles was severed, it regenerated almost instantly. Unsurprising, given its maximum healing talent. Panic began to set in as he desperately sought the talent, but the jellyfish was relentless, attacking him without pause. In a moment of opportunity, the creature lowered its guard, allowing him to touch its tentacles and successfully copy the maximum healing talent. The pain from the process caused him to sink toward the lakebed, nearly drowning, but the acquisition of the talent made it worthwhile. Rising from the depths, power surged through his body like an electric current. He was determined to win. The jellyfish, now furious, launched another attack, which he managed to block with the umbrella. Unfortunately, the attack was corrosive, destroying the umbrella and leaving his hands exposed. Losing the umbrella was a setback. Without it, he could no longer maintain the water bubble and had to rely on his own ability to breathe. Once again, the status window opened, showing the presence of a tiger claw fish with a medium rank innate talent, along with other maximum rank talents. Surrounded by a swarm of jellyfish, he realized he no longer needed to engage with them, having already obtained the talent. With his oxygen running low, escape was his only option. Yi Tian surfaced with great difficulty. The jellyfish, territorial by nature, didn't let up, their tentacles still trying to reach him even after he left the water. He used his speed talent at full capacity, trying to outrun them. It wasn't easy, but he eventually managed to escape and return to the cave where he usually cultivated. Relief washed over him. He had finally left that harrowing experience behind. Having copied the healing talent quickly, he checked the status window, which now asked if he wanted to merge the newly acquired talent with his existing ones. Upon choosing to merge, the pain subsided. His body had adapted, and the integration of the healing talent was successful. His status window now read, Human Race, Executive Talent, High Rank, Speed Talent, Medium Rank, Sword Talent, Medium Rank, probe talent, beginner rank, healing talent, maximum rank. The merging process was smoother than anticipated, and he was eager to test his new abilities. The poison from the immortal jellyfish was extremely lethal. Even in small doses, it could kill a normal person. However, thanks to his newly acquired healing talent, he quickly recovered. Feeling stronger than ever, he marveled at his newfound resilience. This healing talent was extraordinary. Yet, most of the talents he possessed were supportive. If he wanted to face stronger opponents, he would need to copy more offensive talents. It was time to return home. Once there, he flipped through a book, searching for something, perhaps an aggressive bear or a fire bird, though that might be too much. His sister, angry at his long absence, scolded him as she cut his hair. While reading, he found something that caught his eye. A powerful ant, a low-ranked beast specialized in combat, often seen in colonies. When these ants launched a collective attack, even seasoned martial warriors struggled to escape. This was exactly what he needed. His eyes gleamed at the thought of acquiring such a talent. At the martial pavilion, he greeted Zhao. At first, she treated him like any other customer, but upon recognizing him, she remarked how long it had been and asked what he was looking for. He explained that he needed the corpse of a powerful ant and showed her what he meant. She smiled, identifying the creature as a powerful ant, noting its usefulness in revitalizing the body. Despite her smile, he couldn't help but wonder if she appeared unwell. Though there were no powerful ants available, she had information that might interest him. She revealed that there was a medium base building a trade route, and many beasts roamed the area between the two bases, including a nest of powerful ants. He asked if the medium base was the iron trap base. In his thoughts, it seemed plausible, as it was the only one in the area. She confirmed that it was indeed the Iron Trap base, located about 100 kilometers from the line base, though she recalled that someone from the family had died there some time ago. He mentioned that the Iron Trap base was planning an invasion. She clarified that the family had resolved the misunderstanding with the Iron Trap base, thanks to their assistance. This made him suspicious. If the family was involved, something strange must be going on. While he was deep in thought, she handed him something, asking him to take it. He asked what it was. She said it was the necessary symbol to participate in the events. It was originally meant for the young lady, but explained that they didn't work with the medium base. She said that the two bases planned to send some martial warriors to clear the beasts in the nest along the trade route. If he participated in that operation, it would be possible to get his hands on a powerful ant's corpse. She mentioned the Lin family. They were the ones who ruled the base absolutely. Looking at that card, even though it was the Mo family, they only deserved to be called subjects. With that pass, he could now venture forth. As expected from the Lin family, they recruited hundreds of warriors at once. He knew he needed to act cautiously. Lin Mingji arrived, stating that everyone was welcome to the beast extraction operation. He was the current head of the Lin family, at the top of the elite martial warrior level. The Great Elder and the Elder were also there. He was happy to meet the Mo family again. He mentioned that everyone knew their Linhai base was too small and that resources were limited, making it difficult to meet everyone's cultivation needs. Collaborating with a medium-sized base would yield incredible benefits for that operation, which was very important. It was clear that dealing with monsters was a dangerous job. However, the reward for that operation would be more generous than any hunt they had done before. Everyone shouted glory to the Lin family. Yi Tian wondered if that wasn't Captain Galewolf. He thought he probably didn't remember him anymore. As the speech ended, they said that Lin Ming could guarantee right there that anything that appeared during that operation would completely belong to him. And everyone shouted long live the Lin family again. The family had prepared another reward. Everyone in the martial warrior realm received 20 bottles of medium-ranking monster juice worth 2 million coins. The elite warriors would receive 3 bottles of high-ranking monster juice worth 10 million coins. He asked everyone to register and hoped they would all return overloaded. They asked everyone to line up. He asked them to please place their hands on the evaluation rock. It would analyze their strength. When they placed their hands on the evaluation stone, it would display the ranking of the person for everyone to see. This continued until it was everyone's turn. Seeing that, he realized how Ling was right. There was no need to work for powerful families, especially that damn Mo family. If they found out he was an elite warrior, it would cause unnecessary problems. That that tool, based on power detection, if he used less strength, it should show a lower ranking. The assistant asked him to please place his hand on the evaluation rock. He was about to place it, holding back and controlling himself as much as possible to use just a little strength so it would show as an advanced martial rank. Then he placed his hand on the rock and channeled a little power, and it read that he was just an advanced martial warrior. Even though he was below his level, he still caught Elder Mo's attention with his advanced martial rank. Not only him, but several people there were impressed that an advanced martial warrior looked so young. They thought he could be a genius from a powerful family, reaching that level at such a young age. What insane talent for cultivation he must have. He had only demonstrated a portion of his strength, and even so, he attracted so much attention, it seemed he had to use even less strength. True geniuses are always discovered while still young. Look at how outstanding he was, and he was still an advanced warrior. He truly attracted too much attention. They were all only mid-rank warriors, and he was too young to be advanced. Then they had the brilliant idea to invite him because their team was still one member short. The captain thought it was a great idea, but he didn't know if he would accept since he was advanced and everyone wanted him. Then he called the captain and said it seemed he was heading their way. So he approached and spoke with Captain Galewolf, telling him that it had been a long time. Immediately, he recognized that the boy knew he was the martial apprentice who saved the little girl from the Silver Moon Wolf. The captain told the boy it was unbelievable to become an advanced martial warrior in a year, and the boy had hidden it. It was just luck. He asked the captain if he could join Team Galewolf during that operation. The captain said enthusiastically that of course he could, and then he asked the captain if he could take care of him. The captain said to relax because they would do their best. A girl said it was easier to have another advanced martial rank with them, which made him sweat. That was their mission area. The map only said that low-ranking monsters would appear there, but if they prioritized their safety above all else. Yi Tian warned the captain that they were approaching and were extremely fast. The captain asked everyone to calm down and said the wild wolves were just snacks. He warned that he would deal with the ones in front, while Yi Tian handled the ones in the back, and the others would assist when necessary. Tian was ready for combat. They were observing the wolves that had already surrounded them, each positioned on one side as if it had started from the outside. Those savage creatures seemed bent. He would really like to face them. The captain gave the signal that they could charge, and Tian was prepared. He charged in, and the wild wolves did too. With no difficulty, he was eliminating the wolves. There was no fear in his eyes. He just wanted to eliminate them and was charging forward. With his sword, he faced the wild wolves equally, fearing nothing, even when they were furious and snarling. He simply kicked one of them to push the animal far away after receiving that blow. He blocked another distracted wolf with a downward strike, embedding his sword. Before he knew it, he had done his job very well. He was even receiving applause. The captain said he had done very well. He told him it had been incredible. The captain remarked that it was a shame he was still behind him, as he had killed 3 wolves. He took it lightly because he knew that if he wanted, he could have killed many more. One of them said he already had such a skill at such a young age. Don't be so conceited, Captain. The captain and his friend were having a friendly discussion, with the captain calling the other a bastard, saying he could at least score once in his life. Anyway, they were worried because the wolves didn't wait to attack them in the valley. Their chances would have been greater that way. Maybe they even wanted to, but they couldn't. They wanted to know what that meant. The captain explained that this wasn't their territory, and there were stronger beasts in the area. Hearing this, he was upset because stronger beasts or 5 wouldn't hold out. Then another guy asked him to stay calm because there were 3 martial rank intermediate and 2 advanced rank in the area. There was no reason to be afraid. To calm him down, the captain showed that he said he was a Lin family descendant, that all the captains had received one so that if they were in danger, they could simply call for help. Then they said they could go all out without worrying. With that, he managed to calm one of his team members, who then asked to continue. They were walking through what seemed to be a deserted town when they heard something. He asked them to stop because he heard some movements. Yi Tian warned that they were coming from above. This time, there were some lizards that wanted to kill them and seemed a little stronger than the wolves. The status window showed that he was a lizard type. Innate talent ranking novice, low rank fire talent. One of them opened his mouth and was about to launch a huge fireball. Tian realized it was a fire talent when that explosive ball was heading toward them. They started running and dodging to avoid being hit by the lizard's fire, which were extremely large lizards. But knowing about the walkie-talkies, the captain's group felt safer and decided to settle the score with the lizards. The captain, judging by the aura, assessed it was a beast of low rank, so they could attack it but be careful of the flames. Then they shouted that they would go after those lizards. Tian wanted to know if they would be okay. The captain replied that they were just low-ranking beasts. One of them, being on top of a beast, shouted that he had defeated that lizard. He was happy talking about their teamwork, how it had worked, and how hard it was to eliminate those lizards. One of them said that the beast was of low rank, and so weak to finish off that it was a piece of cake. He also said that if there were any more, it would only be a problem. But as soon as he finished speaking, the rest of the pack appeared, and now they were all being heavily attacked by those beasts. One of them needed to be saved. Yi Tian caught him in midair before being hit by the flames of that lizard. Then they started shouting that there were more of them. It was a fire talent, probably the same type of beast. Yi Tian shouted that it seemed like it wasn't over yet. Seeing the number of beasts with fire powers surrounding them, they were now trembling for their lives. The instructions were for the teams in the area and the nearby teams in Area B to focus on the dangers of Area C. The captain was nervous, asking for help over the radio. However, it seemed there was no signal. The location wasn't allowing contact with anyone else. Then he realized that the bastards had ignored his call for help, and the captain was not happy about it. His companions asked for help, hoping there would be news from the Lin family to support them. The captain thought he had followed the right person this time and led everyone to win the reward. He never expected that the Lin family would also be like the others. It seems he was mistaken, and the Lin High base was already rotten. If the captain was saying those words, he was not treating them like brothers. If he wanted everyone to leave, they were willing to go together. The captain feared for their lives and asked them to listen to the orders. They also didn't want to leave him behind because they thought it was dangerous. One of them was already running and said the others were a bunch of idiots if they didn't run. The only thing waiting for them was death. Running, he said the others were too slow and that he would go first, saying goodbye and leaving. One of the veterans said that believing in those kinds of newbies was not a good thing. If he survived this, he definitely wouldn't be a part of it. The captain told you that he was very talented, and it would be a shame if he died there. He asked him to please take 2 of his brothers and escape. The 2 he was referring to didn't want to run but wanted the kid to escape quickly and not ruin his future. He said it was clear that he would run, but he ran in the direction of those giant monsters. As he said, he was going to run, but he didn't mention which way. When the captain noticed his aura, he said it was the time for an elite martial artist who had hidden his true power. Everyone was amazed that he was elite and had hidden it. He was thinking that he didn't want to show his true power, but still, he wasn't taking it lightly with those giant lizards. But now it didn't matter anymore. If he didn't do that at that moment, the Storm Wolf team would be exterminated. At first, he thought that with the combat ability of the leader of the Storm Wolf team, escaping alone would be easy for him. But he chose to stay behind to let his companions escape. If he continued to hide his true power, he wouldn't be considered human. He thought that would be the difference between him and the trash of the Mo family, so he didn't hold back. He went all out against those lizards. As for attracting all kinds of danger, there was no time to think about it. He believed the leader of the Storm Wolf team wouldn't bring problems to him. He used his speed ability because he had to be very fast since he was fighting them all alone. If the situation got worse, some of them could get seriously hurt. That fire talent was really complicated to fight against. The team was impressed. That was the true power of an elite martial artist. It was incredibly amazing. He was up high, bravely fighting them so that no one there would get hurt. There were many, and their powers were annoying, and they usually attacked in pairs. He had to use the Shadow Strike more than once to manage to stop them. He was on another level and managed to face a pack of those things alone. The captain and their leader were angry because they thought the kid was too strong. Without a doubt, he already belonged to the highest power of the Lin High base at this stage. Screams were heard. The boy who had fled in fear and didn't want to confront them was now surrounded by 2 wolves. They were attacking him to exterminate him. Someone from his team noticed and shouted to the leader that it seemed someone was in danger. The leader said not to worry about him. He was dreaming, thinking he would save him after trying to escape alone. Yi Tian said he wanted to go deeper and asked what they were going to do next and if they wanted to go with him. He looked back and said he wouldn't stop there. They all widened their eyes because they didn't know he was so determined. The captain closed his eyes and said the Storm Wolf team would enter and leave together. That was what the boy had imagined of the captain he once admired so much. The girl was healing the injury of one of the companions. She told him he was pretty messed up, but brother Yi Tian was fine. The captain thanked him for bringing everyone there. He shouted that he was fine and that he would separate now. He wanted to try something and asked the captain if he would continue further. However, judging by the current situation, continuing wouldn't be the smartest choice. They said Yi Tian could go ahead while he would go alone. The captain told him he wouldn't go alone with those skills. He would be fine. And Tian told the captain not to worry because he was okay. The captain even tried to negotiate to see if he would stay a little longer, but he couldn't. He was determined and was leaving. Someone from the group asked what they would do if they followed him. The captain said that if they continued, they would just be a hindrance. He said that with his strength, he would be fine and didn't need any help at all. Before encountering even stronger families and getting into irritating situations, he needed to test how strong his healing talent was. He went alone to look for the nest of powerful ants that was on fire in the area, and even then, he was still around. He smelled something bad and thought their nest might be there. There was some strange movement as he looked down to see what was happening. The ground beneath him was collapsing. Something was coming out of the ground to attack him, and he jumped as fast as he could. But when he realized he had already been attacked and hit, he was struck by a wall. He hadn't expected to find them so quickly. That first blow he took truly caught him off guard. He prepared to go on the offensive because he wanted to test the healing talent he had founded. It was a time to test it. The opponent was big and strong enough. Being faster, he dodged and repositioned himself. The enemy was coming straight for him with that strong creature, which he didn't fear. He was happy because he had found a giant guinea pig. This was perfect, and he would use it to test the healing talent. The animal was preparing to attack. Its eyes were shining, and it opened its mouth to form a huge fireball. Yi Tian prepared to be hit by it. After being hit, he was sent flying. The attack from that creature was so immense that even where the captain and his team were, they could see the explosions. The captain feared for the boy's life, but he had seen with his own eyes how strong he was. After being hit by a direct blow, he was happy because he didn't expect anything less from such a strong being. He seemed like a speck compared to that huge creature, and even so, he wanted to suggest something to the creature. He wanted them to go to the extreme. Then the faster animal launched an even more powerful attack that he didn't defend against or dodge. His proposal was fair. They would see who was faster, whether the animal would burn him first or he would exhaust the animal before that. He was using his active healing skill that he had obtained from the immortal jellyfish all the time. He was preparing and waiting for the next attack. It should be the most powerful to ensure that, and he was also attacking. He received even more powerful attacks, which was what he was really after, to test how strong and powerful that healing ability could be. Watching the explosion from a distance were the captain and his team, who observed that the explosions had been occurring for over an hour. It was so strong that it was shaking even where they were. Pieces of the structures were being thrown. The captain said he wasn't sure, but they couldn't even interfere in a fight of that caliber. But in the end, Yi Tian won with his persistence, and his healing ability spoke louder. Already on top of the defeated animal, he said it seemed he would win that game. It was confirmed that that healing talent consumed a lot of energy, and he felt very exhausted. But it was a mid-ranking beast. He was climbing that beast. He needed to replenish his energy, made a slight cut, and was taking juice directly from it. His plan was to use the juice to aid in recovery. After that, he sat on top of it and began to cultivate. The people on the other side noticed that the fight had already stopped. They asked the captain if the fight was over. They also noticed that someone was coming toward them. It was Yi Tian returning. He found it common to see them there since he had told the captain to go first. The captain told him about that. Although they hadn't helped with anything, they were worried, so they stayed there waiting. They asked him if his clothes had been destroyed by the beast's flames. He said he was fine, and someone there had an extra set and offered it to him. The girl who fixed the clothes said it was a bit big. It might not fit him well. He told her it was fine and thanked her. They asked the captain what they should do with those beauties. He said that when that time came, he would like to hear brother Yi Tian's opinion, as it was his credit. Yi Tian told the captain that since they hadn't left, and the beasts were scattered, they should take them. They were happy because they had never seen so many beasts together. The beasts hadn't killed them, but if they returned, they would tire them to death. He told the captain not to mess with those small fish, and to deal with the king of the lizards first. The captain asked if he would carry those beasts with them, and he replied no. The captain wanted to know where he was going, and he said he was heading to the area of the powerful ants. The captain found that boy a bit strange. Now the captain was even more worried because he had heard that the most difficult mission of that beast extermination was an ant nest of powerful ants. He said that even though the ant was powerful, it was just a low-ranked beast. Within the nest, they were everywhere. It was difficult to escape while fighting alone, even for an experienced warrior. The captain hoped that Brother Yitian would be extremely careful. Then all the stronger groups gathered there, and he noticed that the Mo family was also there, including the strongest elder, and also the Lin family. There was one person whose family he didn't know. However, he noticed that someone was spying on them. The young man from afar noticed that the old man was sharp. Everyone shouted to capture the one who was spying. He thought that no matter how bad it got, he should eventually infiltrate the front lines. So he avoided being captured and was led by 2 hunters. Just by looking at him, the old man realized that he had the martial strength of an elite warrior. He asked who that boy was and why he was spying from afar. He said he was a warrior from Lehigh base who saw that he was running a great mission there, so he just came to help. That old man asked to let the boy go. He asked which family he was from and why he wasn't with them. Those nearby said he wasn't from their family, and others said they didn't even know him. He also wasn't from the other family. He asked the young man if he was already an elite martial warrior at such a young age, not understanding why no one recognized him even being a martial elite. He lowered his head and said that someone there mentioned that Elder Qing was good with jokes, and what he meant by no one recognizing him. He said he knew and that he belonged to the Lin family. The boy realized that he declared he was a member of the Lin family as soon as he saw the old man saying he was an elite martial warrior. As expected, the head of the Lin family managed to outshine even the Mo family in acquiring talents. He then asked the boy why he was still standing there and to prepare to return to his group. The guy was pleased because he had obtained an elite martial warrior for free. That was indeed a steal. The girls were watching from afar, not believing that the Lin family was daring to try to steal Yitian from them. Xiao Yu agreed with her when she said that Yitian could only belong to the martial pavilion. After arriving at the ant nest, everyone was amazed by the size of the hive. Yitian was with the Mo family, and he thought that now that everyone knew he was an elite warrior, it seemed he wouldn't be able to train stealthily as he used to. But he also thought that his current abilities didn't have much to fear. They were asked to stop because the leader would check. So he went to the front to cast a spell that seemed to be for recognition. Then they realized that Elder Qing was ready with the formation. He shouted for them to prepare. He thought he was at the hive of magical ants that he believed were in the peaks. Everyone was closely watching what he was doing. Yitian was satisfied because he had finally arrived at the nest of the powerful ants. After the verification, Elder Qing would take over from there for the time being. He also asked everyone to step back a little. People were worried about what he might be trying to do. He gathered his energy in his palms and launched what seemed to be a containment seal. With his energized hand, he placed it in the middle of that diagram and commanded it to open. After that, he summoned explosive fireballs. With the effect of the diagram, they exploded from the inside out. The leader of the Iron Tooth base was not satisfied as it seemed they were underestimating him for making a formation. Yitian thought that strong formation was something he would need to learn in the future. The girls who were on a nearby mountain observing, Xiao Yu told her lady that she thought that crazy man was using such a precious formation. Then she replied that the Iron Tooth base had its plans and found it interesting that one of those balls was enough to suppress the maritime base. Everyone noticed that the hive was collapsing. They found his formation powerful. The monsters also turned to ashes, and no one could see a single magical ant corpse. Yitian also couldn't see one. Not even a body was left. They all turned to ashes, and he was exactly there for that. He was angry because there were no corpses left. There would be no way for him to copy the skill he wanted. The girls who were watching knew that old man had just messed things up. That formation was as if it had provoked a wasp nest. There was a huge hole, and they found it interesting, but it was dark, and nothing could be seen. But someone identified several shining dots inside, and from that cavity emerged a huge powerful ant. It attacked whoever it saw first without being able to defend and threw them away, leaving everyone there frightened as they realized their magnitude. Now that he had shown himself, he was ready to attack the rest of the group. The elders of the Mo family were very happy to see the magical ant. Others thought it couldn't be possible after all that explosion. There were still ants. Yitian had that look when he really wanted to copy a talent. They shouted that there were too many, and they wouldn't stop coming out. Gradually, they seemed to have formed an army of ants. They were asked to prepare. All the warriors of the maritime base prepared to fight, calling for the leader. They quickly quickly advanced towards those ants. Yi Tian was among them and just needed to touch one. They were bravely fighting against the ants, gathering many to see if they could take down a single being. When he saw one fall, he realized that this could be the opportunity, so he touched it. And the status window notified him that the highest level talent had been copied successfully. Now he was happy to have obtained what he came to look for. He felt that energy from the powerful ant coursing through his body. The status window showed that a talent for strength and high rank had been copied successfully and asked if he would like to merge. He was so unconcerned that he was checking his status window amidst the chaos of ants and various dangerous opponents. He found it difficult to merge there and thought it would be better to find a safer place. Using his speed talent, he ran to a location. When he was interrupted by two enormous ants, he used the Shadow Blade and also the Phantom Assassin. All those were fantastic strikes. A tremor was felt. It seemed that there was something even larger. They felt that absurd pressure and realized it was a high-ranking monster. Gradually, an extremely fast and strong being was emerging from the ground. The moment its power exuded all around, it was a high-ranking powerful ant. They screamed that a high-ranking monster had appeared and that they should retreat quickly. The elders of the family were running from that imminent danger. The group noticed that those bastards were quite fast when it came to running. It was said that they also retreated. Many were afraid of the high-ranking beast. The ant on the other side realized that they were a bunch of losers and was about to leave. She called Xiaoyu, who asked about Yi Tian. She told her not to worry because she knew he would make it out. They were fleeing and shouting that there wasn't a great martial warrior among them who could fight against the monster. So why did he escape? They realized that among the great martial warriors of the Iron Tooth base, Elder Qing was the first to run away. They understood they had been fooled by that old man. Yi Tian was thinking that it really was impossible to trust those guards. Several warriors were left behind as they couldn't escape and were being brutally attacked by that ranked monster. The power of that creature was overwhelming. The pressure was so strong that it was making it difficult for the remaining warriors to escape. Many were feeling that pressure, which was too strong for them, so much so that some couldn't even breathe. However, something passed among them like a flash of light, and they wondered why that guy was so fast. That dark mist was some sort of suppressor that needed to be escaped from as quickly as possible. So, using his speed ability, he ran as fast as he could to get rid of that suppression. When he could run no more, he started to fall. He observed and knew that the golden ant would definitely keep an eye on the team. So he thought it was time to get away from it. He moved to another area, a more deserted side. He passed near where he had captured other beasts, and those were the desperate members of Captain Galewolf's team, the same professional hunters. They had dissected so well that only the skeletons remained. He opened his window again, and now he could merge the power of the powerful ant. And that was what he did, in front of the esteemed figures. Having absolute power was the only way to contain them. It was already night, and he thought it was time to return home. When day broke, he was already at home cultivating. It was a high-ranking strengthening talent equivalent to a 10-fold increase in his strength. Although he was still an elite warrior, taking down a great martial warrior in his initial state would not be such a difficult task. His sister was angry because he had finally returned but had just stood there all day. She noticed that instead of responding, he was pretending to be a master. She kept chattering in his ear. She told him that in that case, it wouldn't help to cry afterward. Then she went to the kitchen and said that he was in trouble in her hands, as she was going heavy on the salt and other seasonings. After the preparation, she spoke softly that the food was ready. He was happy because there were many different dishes. She said it was because he had been working so hard, so it was clear she would prepare a feast for him to enjoy. Happy, he said he would take his time with everything. However, just when he was about to eat, someone knocked on the door, and he went to answer. She told him to try a little before opening. It was Captain Galewolf at his door, and he asked him to come in. The captain said he had brought part of the earnings for him, showing the bag, saying they had achieved a lot. Yi Tian replied seriously that he didn't need to. The captain watched and said how he could do that. Everyone received a share. Then he invited the captain to stay and eat. He needed to ask something. He thought it was great because it seemed there were so many delicious foods. He was eating everything and thought it was all very tasty. Yi Tian told him to feel free because he wasn't that hungry. The captain was happy because it had been a long time since he had eaten home-cooked food. Yu awkwardly asked if it wasn't too salty. He said the food was mild and thought she had gone easy on the salt. She didn't care as long as he liked the food. Yi Tian explained that he had been cultivating at home and wasn't up to date on recent events, so the captain said he wanted to ask him something. He said that from what he heard, the Iron Tooth base and their base had suffered significant losses. Yi Tian asked if there really were many. He said yes. He said they had lost over 50 elite martial warriors and even 3 great martial warriors. He asked if it was at the nest of the powerful ants where they had lost the 3 great martial warriors. He replied that when the first platoon of warriors retreated, they organized a larger and better one but still failed. What happened angered the Iron Tooth base, so they sent a great master who finally cleared that ant nest. He asked if it was a great master, then inquired if the trade route had been cleared. He replied yes, but didn't know what the Iron Tooth base was trying to do. They didn't know if it was worth paying such a price. Yi Tian was pondering what the captain was saying about the Iron Tooth base. He accompanied the captain to the exit, downstairs. Before the captain left, they were talking about how they always saw each other but didn't realize they were being watched. Suddenly, someone appeared, asking permission from Yi Tian. That person said their name was Mo Yuan, and that they were the butler of the Mo family. Yi Tian found it strange that someone from that family was looking for him. The butler approached him, greeted him formally, and said he had been sent by the head of the family to invite him to a meal. However, he declined the invitation, using the excuse that he hadn't been leaving home lately. The butler took the rejection well and said that no one had ever refused an invitation from the Mo family. The captain tried to persuade the butler not to take it so seriously. However, the butler, walking angrily closer to him, said that he was just the Yi surname. He got so close that he was looking into his eyes and told him to obediently accept and know his place, while placing his hand on Tian's shoulder. When Tian saw that the excellent butler was putting his hands on his shoulder, he dodged and pushed the butler hard to the ground. The captain, witnessing everything, was asking Brother Yi Tian to calm down a bit. Running away, the butler said he would one day kill him. The captain told Tian it was better to provoke a gentleman than a petty man, but he said it was fine, no problem. Tian was counting on that high-ranking strengthening talent. He barely used his strength and had already broken the butler's arm. The butler was in a lonely place and tore the handwritten invitation from the leader of the Mo family himself. He was saying that Yi Tian would regret having done that. In the family mansion, the head of the family was pacing back and forth, waiting for the butler to arrive with a response to the invitation. The great elder of the Mo family was also there. Suddenly, the butler arrived, shouting to grab the elder's attention. He ran so fast that he fell and asked them to take revenge for him. The leader told him that he had only asked him to deliver the invitation, not to kill someone, and asked what was happening. The butler recounted that he had delivered the invitation as requested, with great politeness and respect to Yi Tian, and that for some reason, that guy had started to ignore him. Mo Kongxing, the elite warrior, head of the family, and son of Chongqing, the patriarch of the Mo family, was not pleased. The butler told the gentleman that not only had he been injured but that he had torn the invitation that the gentleman had handwritten. He was extremely upset because he felt unappreciated for his kindness. However, when his father began to have severe coughing fits, he quickly went to his father's side. The father said he was fine. Mo Kongxing told the butler that he could leave. He grabbed some medicine to give to his father and asked him to take it. After drinking the medicine, he said that the battle against the ants had left him no choice but to use a secret art to escape and fight with everything he had. But unexpectedly, he injured his core, and he feared he would never be able to heal it. The son asked him not to say such things, as he would get better. Chongqing said he knew his body better than anyone. He also said that when he died, the Mo family would no longer have a great warrior to take care of it. He said it would be a devastating catastrophe. Then the son asked him if Yi Tian was waiting for the Lin family's invitation. The father said they would have to win against the Lin family on that matter. Since they hadn't managed to invite him politely, they would have to take him by force. Mo Kongxing said that at the end of the day, Yi Tian's surname would always be Yi since he was an outsider. Even if they took him, how could they ensure he would truly serve them? The father said it could be done with that bottle of elixir. That elixir could take away the individual's free will and planned to use it during the banquet, but it seemed they would have to use it earlier. He handed it to his son and asked him to store it properly. He said to first remove his free will, then brainwash him, and give him a new identity. They would just say he was the bastard son, and make him change his surname to Mo, so they could recognize his ancestors and return to the family. His son did not like the idea of having a bastard brother and asked him to stop imagining things, as he would steal his position in the family. Changqing told his son that the boy could be his bastard son. It didn't matter as long as he had the surname Mo. Then, laughing at his father, who was only concerned about his reputation, the father said there was no reason to waste time. Looking at his son, he told him to make it happen. The son greeted his father as if he were greeting a warrior and said he would take 10 great elders with him to carry out the plan. With their people, they believed they wouldn't have any problems capturing the weak Tian, so they went after the boy. The report was that they entered Tian's house. They said they would repeat the plan to capture his sister to make him surrender. Then they said they were outside, ready to board him, and would notify if anything changed. They had already taken the entire floor and were everywhere. From the roof, one of them reported that he understood and would be entering soon. They entered the room to capture the girl and said they had already located the target. He sneaked up on the girl who was lying in bed. When he lunged at her, he was greatly surprised. The sheet flipped, and there below was he, waiting for that moment. When they realized that the girl was not in bed and it was the boy who was waiting for them, they were scared. He only felt his hand around his neck, lifting him up with his strength. He told him they had taken too long. The communicator in his ear was asking if he had managed to capture Yi Yu and to please respond if he could hear. But he couldn't answer as he was being attacked by Yi Tian. They asked the second elder to respond immediately. Yi Tian replied on the communicator that he had captured him, so not to worry as he would take him. However, he couldn't imitate the voice, and they recognized him. He threw the second elder out the window and told the communicator to try to surrender to him. The other one on the roof didn't understand what was happening when he saw the other one falling freely. As he got closer, he noticed he wasn't breathing. The boy who was on the roof asked them to be careful, as that guy might have called for help. Then they said they would help on that Lin family base. Who would dare to challenge the Mo family other than him? Then they started asking who was there, telling whoever it was to reveal themselves and show up. But then they realized that they were nobody. However, by the time they realized this, it was already too late. One of them had already lost his head. Yi Tian was counting, and 2 of them were already down. The news was that they had hired shadow assassins. The guy who hired them spread that information quickly, and everyone started running, trying to escape. Tian activated his speed talent, and before they could get anywhere, they were already lost. Those who remained didn't understand what kind of speed that was. He could use as many talents as he wanted. He just couldn't leave any witnesses to tell anyone. He was preparing to finish off the next ones when someone shouted his name. They pointed to where he was and shouted to capture him. 2 of them came towards him to take him down. He simply readied his sword, energized it, and unleashed his strength talent. He held both of them at once. They were astonished that he had managed to take both combined attacks at the same time. He activated hidden blades and charged at the 2, attacking the shadow assassin. Someone asked what the situation was and demanded a response. But the situation was not good at all, and he moved on to the next one. Now they had left that man maddeningly furious. He wasn't going to let anyone leave after they had invaded his home. After that furious attack he had while walking, only the bodies of those who had tried to mess with him remained. One of those lying on the ground couldn't even get up. He was terrified and questioned how he was just an elite martial warrior. Then he asked if he was the father of Mo Shoubei. Someone above, seeing him talking to that elder, thought they saw an opening. So when he jumped to grab him, Yi Tian simply dodged. The one trying to attack him thought Yi Tian was too fast. He went to the guy who had tried to grab him and attacked. Then a bunch of them responded, saying he was his father, and if he didn't kill him, they could resolve everything peacefully. Yi Tian told him he would share a secret and said he was the one who ended his son's life. But on his knees, the elder said it was fine. His son must have offended him. He also said he had plenty of money. If he spared him, he would give him as much as he wanted. Just don't end him. But Yi Tian didn't want to make deals with those people and decided he would exterminate the father as well. Yi Tian did what he said he would do. He knew he could never leave revenge for the next day. The fault was theirs. They were the ones who tried to harm his sister. He said he would obliterate that entire family. With his ability and speed activated, he shot out of there. At the Mo mansion, Changqing was asking why the 10 great elders hadn't returned yet. His son told him not to worry. At the Linhai base, it was impossible for the 10 great elders. A sword imbued with energy was thrown in their direction. Changqing noticed the sword immediately and jumped to to save his life. He wanted to know who was ambushing him. With the sword stuck in the ground full of energy, he also lunged to grab the sword. He told him he had sent people to kill him and was asking who he was. It was unbelievable. And Mo Tsungxing asked him why he was there and where the 10 great elders were. Yi Tian told him to relax because they would soon find all of them in hell. He incredulously asked what the boy had just said. He didn't understand anything, and nobody lunged at the head of the family. He prepared his sword, aimed, and launched it at that man. He attacked the patriarch of the Mo family, who didn't even try to dodge. He was on the ground. Chang Qing rushed to hold his son, calling his name as he cradled him in his arms. He screamed with rage and pain as he unleashed his secret ability. Yi Tian had seen that ability before when he used it to escape from the ants. This time it was completely different. He was consumed by hatred and revenge. The one in front of him had ended his son's life. That ability he used with the ants didn't compare to the one he was about to use against the boy who warned him that he was finished. Chang Qing was unleashing a monstrous amount of energy and charged at Yi Tian. I stood there in a mix of shock and understanding. However, the father seeking revenge had a punch prepared to strike Yi Tian. After hitting him with a punch that sent him flying, he was ready for more. Tian prepared himself in midair to counterattack. Chang Qing told him to get ready because even his ashes wouldn't diminish the hatred he was feeling. That man had reached a monstrous form. Even his clothes couldn't contain the amount of muscle mass on his body now. All the guards were heading to the location as they had only just realized that an assassin had invaded the mansion. They shouted to protect the patriarch. Tian found it ridiculous that they only became alert after he finished off the head of the family. He concluded that the Mo family was full of idiots. The orders were to exterminate him immediately. The guard had understood and was going to grab him, but he charged at them as if they were nothing. He lunged at them to finish them off. He used his shadow assassin ability and managed to eliminate several of them with that attack. Even seeing it, they couldn't believe it was possible. Chang Qing realized that that bastard possessed the combat abilities of a great warrior. He told his opponent he wanted to see how long his ability could last. Chang Qing thought that brat was very insolent. Still, with his secret ability active, he held his sword and charged for another strike. Tian was blocking the attacks with his sword. Outside the Mo mansion, there were others from another family watching what was happening there. One of them said he didn't know the Mo family had a great warrior. His fighting ability was impressive. Then he asked the young Messi if he should take a closer look. He told him not to be so impatient. They would wait to see how things unfolded from there. The sword fight continued, and neither of them wanted to be the loser. The two were evenly matched in power, but the opponent found his speed incredible and managed to completely block the strikes. Yi Tian prepared for another strike and launched it to attack him. He managed to hit Chang Qing, who felt the blow. He decided to attack immediately but missed. Yi Tian was faster and dodged. He didn't even realize how that kid managed to dodge all those times. Yi Tian returned for another attack. He had fury in his eyes. Chang Qing knew he couldn't continue like this. Instead of wasting energy, he should ask the Lin family for help. What he told him was that he could charge at him, but he didn't say what all of this was. Chang Qing had something in his hands, throwing it to create a large smoke screen. Yi Tian thought it was very unfair to throw a smoke bomb at that moment. Then he realized that he was just trying to escape, but he couldn't let that happen and activated his speed ability to chase him down and not let him escape. Chang Qing realized that this kid would be hard to shake off. The two were moving at extreme speed. Yi Tian stopped in front of him, blocking his escape, and asked where he thought he was going, making his opponent realize that he had a high-ranked speed talent. He thought about going around. Yi Tian said that if that was how he wanted it, then fine, and continued to follow. Chang Qing realized that his secret arts wouldn't last long, but he was already starting to feel the symptoms and fell in midair. Now he was weak and feeling very ill. Yi Tian, slowly approaching, told him that this would be the end for the Mo family, that now they could all meet in hell. Realizing he could no longer run, he looked at the boy and asked him to spare him. He begged him to please spare him, saying he would give the most valuable treasures he possessed. Yi Tian told him that this conversation sounded familiar, then told him he could show what he had to offer. Then that elder, who still had some tricks up his sleeve, formed an energy ball and said he would offer that. He asked him to please accept it. As the seconds passed, that energy ball grew larger and larger. Yi Tian didn't know what it was, but it didn't look good at all. Chang Qing threw that ball up to protect his face. That ball had several weapons launched in his direction, from which he managed to dodge almost all. He found it despicable, as expected from the Mo family, who only knew how to play dirty. Chang Qing, seeing that at least one had grazed his face, was very happy because he told him there was a lethal poison in it, and that now he was the one going to hell. He was happy because in the end, he would be exterminated by his hands. Yi Tian simply activated his healing talent, which kicked in almost immediately. When he realized he also had healing talent, he asked him how many talents he possessed. Yi Tian, holding one of those small knives that had been thrown at him, said that it was about that, and he threw that poison knife at him. The opponent began to feel sick instantly, and in response to the question, he told him to ask Yama. The captain wanted to know why brother Yi Tian hadn't returned yet. He seemed like the babysitter of his sister. Yi Tian arrived just in time to hear this and asked Captain Gailwolf if he was complaining. Turning around, he saw Yi Tian, who was thanking him for taking care of his sister. The captain told him he finally returned and asked if he had finished what he went to do. He replied that he had. He told him that from that moment on, the Linhai base no longer had the Mo family. The captain thought it was cruel. Yi Tian wanted to know where his sister was and asked if any of the assassins managed to track her down. The captain replied that that place was safe and she was resting since she had taken a tranquilizer. He said it was good to hear that she was okay. The captain told them to come down because it was chilly on the roof. So the two descended, and the captain asked what his plans were now that the Mo family was gone. He said he wanted his sister to start cultivating. The captain, without reaction, asked if she would cultivate. Yi replied yes, wondering if there was a way for normal people to improve faster. The captain didn't know if wearing something like that could improve her, but if she was willing to spend money to buy resources, that was what happened with the children from the big families. Then the captain told him to take a look at Yiyu, saying she was on the upper bunk. He entered the room slowly not to scare her, approached the bed, and called her name. Then he realized she was okay. Seeing that he had arrived, she jumped up to hug him as she always did. She said she was very scared he wouldn't come back. Hugging her, he patted her head to calm her. He told her she could relax because he would always be there. He promised her he would always be there. The news was about the massacre of the Mo family. Everyone was talking about how lucky the person must have been to do that. Suddenly they started talking about someone who was arriving. It was the young master of the Lin family, Lin Minzi, and the great warrior Lin Zhe. Xiaoyu informed them that the Lin family was there. She just kept looking at him. She would never have imagined she would find Patriarch Lin in such a remote place. Holding that red sphere, he said it was probably the secret weapon of the Mo family, the clan's treasure, the Iron Pearl. That weapon was sinister and could turn the tide. It had long-range attacks and inflicted lethal damage. It was used in unexpected situations. Not even a great warrior managed to avoid it. However, the individual not only escaped but also managed to exterminate Mo Chang Qing. And according to survivors, it was just one person at maximum level, a great warrior. They feared that someone with that ability couldn't be from the Linhai base. It could also be the Iron Prison base as a demonstration of power. Lin replied that he had also thought about that, but when the spy reported that the Iron Prison base suggested establishing a trade route, and that near the base there was a great monster that would soon evolve into a king. The Iron Prison base harbored an enemy that would threaten their existence. So what he was saying was that that so-called trade route was nothing more than their migration route. When the two bases merged, the new and old powers would be divided into two factions, and the Lin family would no longer be able to represent the Lin family itself. The patriarch of the Lin family said that the old faction would be their leader, so they would take advantage of the show of force from the Iron Prison base. The patriarch of the Lin family told Elder Zhe to do what he should have done, he said, and greeted him, and said he would deliver a letter personally to all the great families inviting them to use the resources of the Mo family. Yi Tian opened a bag and poured out several elixirs. The captain was shocked by all those elixirs he saw. He bet those elixirs cost more than his entire mansion. Yu asked if her sister had gone mad. He asked her if it was a real one, and told her to give it all back. She immediately said that she had finally managed to save enough money for a wife. Taking advantage of the fact that she was talking so much, he caught her off guard and put the elixir in her mouth. Despite her fright, she felt the reaction of the elixir acting on her body. Her brother looked on and was pleased that his sister could finally increase her abilities. Yu asked her brother if he was really going. He said yes, he was leaving for the Forest of 1,000 Leaves. He said that as the monster threat grew, the Iron Prisoner base was sending more and more people to the Linhai my base. He needed to get stronger before their defenses gave out. Yu said that he had only just arrived and was already leaving. She asked if he could just stay. He told her to stay calm because he was going to be fine. He wanted her to learn the body training techniques from the captain, take the elixirs and cultivate properly. She asked him to be careful as she would be waiting for him at their house. He smiled and told her to stay calm because everything was going to be fine. He told the captain that I was leaving his sister in his care, and the captain said that he could leave his brother's sister as well. At the same time, motorcycles and cars began to appear that were part of the people from the ironclad base who were arriving more and more. Arriving at the base of the line and making noise and commotion, the guy on the noisy motorcycle was Sun Feng, one of the 4 twins of the new ironbound generation. That was the southern family's convoy. When Yitian looked at the guy on the motorcycle, he immediately checked his status, saw his name and cultivation talent rank, and realized that his status was high. They passed by throwing up their dust and smoke, so much so that Yu even started coughing, thinking that they were losing their way more and more. Yitian didn't know why he had a bad feeling, but he had to go, so he said goodbye to the captain and his sister. He activated his speed skill and set off. His sister asked his brother to be careful. In the forest of 1,000 leaves, he was looking for a quiet place to train. He didn't even find the place very sterile. A large footprint caught his eye and seemed to be the attachment of a black wolf panther. If he found it, he would be able to improve his speed talent. He began to feel very strong elemental force fluctuations and thought there might be monsters fighting nearby. So he decided to go and have a quick look, activated the skill and went as fast as he could. When he arrived, I could see that the 2-time vacation fighter was a golden dragon panther, a rare mutant species more powerful than the black wolf panther. That speed had to be an Apex level speed talent, and that gorilla had to be a high-ranking monster with combat skills that rivaled those of a great warrior. The 2 golden dragon panthers are intermediate ranked monsters, and just having the Apex speed talent would make it difficult for them to defeat the gorilla. He watched the fight a little longer, wondering how he could copy the talent in the middle of such an intense fight. However, while he was thinking, a small animal approached him. When he turned around, it looked like a cat, but he didn't understand why it was there. He didn't know what it wanted, but it was approaching him. Suddenly that little cub began to emanate spiritual light. Suddenly that animal started talking to him, saying that it would like to offer its spiritual light to sign a master and servant contract with him to be his most loyal servant. He thought it was strange that the cub was talking in a boy's voice. With his cute little eyes, he stared at the boy calling him master. Yitian asked why he had recognized the cub as master, and he said that he had detected a benevolent aura from the master. When he looked at the animal status window, he realized that it was the Apex-ranked golden dragon panther with Apex-ranked speed and an intermediate level endurance talent, and a novice healing talent. He thought that speed, stamina and healing were all 3 strong, but this was a divine beast. The little cub then told him to have mercy because their parents were in imminent danger, and he feared for their mother because she was pregnant. Yitian said that it was all right for him to go there. He said that he would call her little Jen from now on, and she would be his first pet, and he was grateful. Because he had touched the puppy, he could copy its speed and the copy was successful, and he was asking if he wanted to merge. The fusion took place. Yitian told the puppy that since he liked him so much, it was only natural that he should lend him his strength. His current status was high cultivation talent speed, rank Apex sword, high rank talent with Apex healing novice shadows and high strength, so he prepared to attack first, targeting his weakness. He attacked the gorilla with the cub and his shoulders went straight into its eyes. He knew that most beasts had eyes as a weakness. The gorilla felt very sorry when his eyes were compromised. Back on the ground, with the other beasts coming towards him, he asked his new friend to explain to his mother and father that he was just a friend. Then the cub made some noises that he was probably telling his parents about. Then he handed his mother a healing pill to take to prevent a miscarriage. He held out his hand to her, she sniffed it, and said she could take it because it was safe and she didn't need to worry. She took it in an instant, and it was already healing, so the little cub told his master that his father had said. He also wanted a medicinal pill, so the cub was very grateful to his new master. He realized that the gorilla was trying to escape, but her parents didn't plan to let the gorilla get away, so he too was going all the way with them, thinking that it was impossible for 3-plex speed talents not to defeat a high-ranking beast. The little boy told his master that it wasn't 3, it was 4 he was learning to fight too. Smiling, he said that she was right. The four of them set off after the escaped gorilla. He hadn't known that the Apex speed ranking was that fast, but he hadn't gotten used to it yet. Seeing that the gorilla was going to attack all of them, he activated his strength talent. He went into hand-to-hand combat with the gorilla, all of them attacking at the same time in order to be more successful. With the strength talent activated, he was preparing a punch to attack the gorilla. With everyone attacking at the same time, they would have a better chance. The gorilla was about to fall. They would have to be quick and not let it react. He hadn't been killed yet. Yi Tian thought the gorilla's body was very resistant. Then one of the dragon panthers hit the gorilla hard. It tried to get as far away as possible, but it was hit. The gorilla was on the ground and they had won. The little cub jumped on his shoulder and asked his master if they had won. He smiled and said yes, he never thought he would one day fight with a beast. But one of them didn't feel well and fell to the ground. He was worried because it was the female dragon panther that had been injured, and in her condition, it was dangerous. The cub cried out for its mother, and the impact of the battle must have been too much for her. Fortunately, he always carried healing potions. It was time to use them. He told the female dragon panther that she would be as good as new and everything would be fine. The dragon panther cub told its master that the mother had said she was feeling much better. He was happy to have saved her and kept the family together. When night fell, the dragon panther cub warned that the black wolf panthers were approaching and that they had lured the gorilla. Yi Tian understood from their posture that they seemed to want to replace their parents and become the new rulers of that forest. Yi Tian told them he was sorry, but he couldn't allow them to do what they wanted. He activated his talent and went to fight them. This time he went alone, as it was too dangerous for the family to face the black wolf panthers. One of them had already felt his blow and was lying on the ground, alongside the golden dragon panther cub, keeping watch. Yi Tian held the cub and told it that from that moment on, lifting the cub up, he would be the ruler of the forest. The next day, he told the cub that its mother was recovering and should not be moving around. However, the mother said there was no problem and that she wanted to give him a gift as thanks. He asked if it hadn't arrived yet, as it was already late afternoon. She said it was nearby, in the cave ahead. Inside the cave, they showed him a herb that was a spiritual herb. She explained that it was the gift she wanted to give him, but she said it needed 30 days to mature, and the master would have to wait a little. Yi Tian wanted to know what the effect of that herb was. He was eager to find out. Yi Tian was now participating in the birthing of the female golden dragon leopard, supporting her and telling her she was almost there. Then, in a short time, another golden dragon leopard cub was born, and Yi Tian said another ruler was born. A month passed, and he was analyzing the gift he had received. The aroma was good, and he thought it had finished maturing. So he picked the fruit, and the cub urged his master to eat it quickly. He ate it, but the taste didn't seem very good. In fact, it tasted horrible. He fell to the ground and began to convulse, the poor cub calling out for his master, who didn't seem well at all. He was feeling a strong headache, as if he were gaining a mental ability. Mental ability was a skill that only martial warriors could use. He could control it even though he was only an elite martial warrior. He felt that his detection range had increased to 50 meters. Moreover, he could now copy talents from a distance. He observed the talent of a golden dragon panther, and the status window asked if he would like to copy it or not, and he declined. The resistance talent wasn't that useful. He needed to prioritize the cultivation talent. It was time to go home. He had gotten several good things this time, so he told the cub that they would be parting ways. He thanked the cub for the gift and said it had been a great help. The cub was crying and told his master that he didn't want to be away from him either. Then he said he would take him and introduce him to someone who would love him very much. Then the little cub thanked his master for deciding to take him. The little golden dragon panther cub told his master that the world was so interesting that he had never seen those things before. He called the cub silly and said that the world outside was very dangerous. Then they raced off, but he was sensing something. He stopped to look at what it was, the 5th Academy. He noticed that there were some bodies on the ground. From their uniforms, he realized they were from the 5th Academy. Then he saw his friend Zhang Bao running to see what had happened to him. As he approached, he asked if he was okay and what had happened to him. When he heard his friend call his name, he was happy because he was alive. He then asked him to drink a high-rank dragon juice. Once he felt a little better, he said that the people who had robbed him were warriors from the Iron Prison Base. The monsters distracted the Iron Prison Base, which allowed 100,000 people to escape from the Lehigh base. The thieves were doing as they pleased. It was chaos. Yi Tian asked who was in charge of the base. He replied that it was the Lin family that was still in command but was really just a puppet. Yi Tian suspected that they managed to take over the base. Meanwhile, far away, Yi was still training with Captain Wolf. However, She was still losing. The captain told her she was doing well and that she was talented. She said it was because the captain had taught her well. Someone had arrived and was applauding her sister's talent. Seeing him, she was happy and jumped up to him as she always did. Then she heard a noise and thought the little animal was a cat, asking what its name was. Yi Tian replied that his name was Jinzinho. Yi Yu grabbed the cub and ran off excitedly. The captain told him he didn't expect her to choose the cat over him. Yi Tian was happy to see Captain Galewolf. He thanked the captain, saying that now Yi Yu was a martial apprentice. The captain told him he imagined he had already heard about the iron prison base chaos. He replied yes and asked if anything had happened at his home. The captain said no, as that place had always been very safe. The captain said that after he left, a girl named Xiao Yu came by to deliver something and said the people from the iron prison would never dare to interfere after seeing that. It was the symbol of the martial pavilion. Yi Tian thought it was very kind of her. The captain told him that nothing guaranteed it would work. He also said that a person named Sun Gung kept coming there to challenge him to a duel to the death. He remembered that name and recalled his talent at the city gates. The captain said he was known as one of the 4 great geniuses of the iron prison base. After entering the city, he started challenging elite warriors. He said it was best to be careful with that guy. He was not a joke. He asked if he was listening to what he was saying. Yi Tian certainly didn't hear anything, as he found it all very interesting. The guy from the Iron Fang base, who had been causing trouble in the city with his motorcycle, pulled a wheelie right in front of Yi Tian. Yi Tian just stared at him. The guy then asked if the person in front of him was Yi Tian. Yi Tian confirmed, and the guy said that finally he had returned. He said he was going to be straight with him. He told Yi Tian to meet him at Midway Square at 10 a.m. for a duel, where they would wager a bronze-ranked blade skill. He then asked if Yi Tian would dare to show up. At that moment, Yi Tian glanced at his status window again. The name Sun Feng appeared, with high cultivation talent and intermediate swordsmanship talent. Yi Tian told him he would definitely be there. He gladly accepted the duel, and just by being near him, the high-ranked cultivation talent was successfully copied. The motorcyclist left, saying he would be waiting for him. When he left, the captain said it was rash of him. Sun Feng's strength was formidable, and with Yi Tian's current power, he would definitely lose. Yi Tian replied that there was no way to know that. His new status window now showed his name as Yi Tian, with high-rank cultivation talent, ranking speed, intermediate swordsmanship, novice shadow talents, and healing talent. Since the cultivation talent generated, he was going to try to stack more. Then an option appeared, asking if he wanted to merge the high-rank talent, yes or no. He wished for yes. This made his cultivation talent rise from high rank to apex rank. He stood up and walked to the balcony, now somewhat excited for the next day's duel. The day of the duel arrived quickly. In Minghui Square, Sun Feng had once again changed the location. No one had defeated him yet. People in the square were saying that the unlucky one this time was named something like Yi, someone they had never heard of. They also said it wouldn't just be the opponent who would be unlucky, but the Lin family's merit monument would be destroyed too. They said that every time a duel happened, Sun Feng used the opportunity to destroy a family's merit monument on purpose. Xiao Yu asked the lady if she thought Yi Tian would show up, clearly worried. She replied that there was no need to worry. Even if he couldn't defeat Sun Feng, he would survive. Yi Yu was there with the captain. She wondered why so many people had come just to watch. The captain explained that every time there was a fight, it was chaos. That was exactly the kind of influence Sun Feng wanted. She told her brother that she wished he wouldn't fight so much and could come home. She thought he dueled too often. He placed his hand on her head and ruffled her hair to relax her, saying it would be quick. Then he left straight for the duel. Upon arriving at the location, people were wondering who he was and who would be fighting Sun Feng. Yi Tian thanked him for waiting. Then Sun Feng revealed the bronze-ranked blade skill called Present Blade and said it would be his if he won. Yi Tian took out a bronze-ranked blade skill of the same level as Sun Feng's and threw it towards the prize Sun Feng was offering to the winner. The opponent didn't like it and thought Yi Tian was too arrogant, immediately drawing his sword. He quickly charged at Yi Tian. His sister, who was among the crowd, shouted for him to be careful. But Yi Tian knew exactly what he was doing. Sun Feng came at him with full force, thinking he could simply win. His eyes showed he was eager to strike, but Yi Tian just dodged his sword swings. The opponent thought Yi Tian was too fast. Frustrated, Sun Feng began hurling insults, asking if Yi Tian's zodiac sign was a rat because all he did was dodge. After several consecutive attacks, Sun Feng swung his sword again, and once more, Yi Tian dodged. But this time, The sword cut a few strands of Yi Tian's hair. Quickly, Yi Tian prepared a punch and struck his opponent. The crowd watching was shocked, as this guy, who they had never seen before, sent Sun Feng flying with just one punch. Yi Tian told him he still seemed like a rat. Sun Feng admitted Yi Tian knew a few tricks and said he wouldn't hold back anymore. Once again, with his sword, he prepared a new attack, gripping it tightly and unleashing the raging stream slash. Yi Tian dodged that attack too, but this time, the attack cut the Lin family's merit monument in half. The head of the family was furious, as Sun Feng had used force to destroy his family's merit monument. Yi Tian realized that was close. Sun Feng had quite a sword skill, but his opponent was worried since Yi Tian had managed to dodge his raging stream slash. Yi Tian said it had been worth dragging the fight out. Sun Feng asked what he was talking about, and Yi Tian explained he didn't fight back because he wanted to see the sword skill. Sun Feng said he was taking this too far and would die for it. He lunged at Yi Tian with another sword strike. But this time, Yi Tian didn't dodge. He broke Sun Feng's sword and tossed it aside. The sword was still spinning in the air when it finally landed, stuck in the ground. Then Yi Tian grabbed his opponent's face and slammed him into the ground. The crowd watching the fight went silent, speechless. After leaving his opponent unconscious on the ground, Yi Tian stood nearby. He said the whole thing was very boring. Xiao Yu said that, as expected, Yi Tian was amazing and had won. Her lady was now determined to make him join the martial pavilion, and resisting would be pointless. Yi Tian seemed to be looking for something near a table. When he didn't find it, he lifted the table to see if it was underneath. Then he found a folder containing the raging stream slash technique. After seeing his opponent's demonstration, he became interested in that skill. Yi ran towards her brother. She was happy because her brother had become very strong. She told him that when they got home, she wanted him to teach her so she could become as strong as he was. The head of the Lin family was present, along with an elder who always accompanied him. He said to the elder that the young master Yi Tian had won, but the head of the family was still concerned. The elder asked him what he wanted to do. The head said that the elder didn't need to protect him anymore. In those days, he should guard Yi Tian's sister. He knew the Sun family wouldn't let this slide. At the captain's house of the Phone Wolf team, Yi Tian was reading the flowing slash technique and realized it could increase attack strength by 6 times. No wonder Sun Feng's strike was so powerful. He tossed the file with the skills onto a table. Feeling a bit wasted, he got up from the armchair and opened his status window to see what was new. There were still 30 days left before he could copy a new talent. He had already forgotten about that and found it frustrating. He was thinking that once the cooldown was over, he would copy Sun Feng's swordsmanship talent. His status window showed his name, cultivation at apex, speed at apex, swordsmanship at intermediate, shadow talent at low, healing talent at apex, and strength at high. The cooldown for copying new talents was 30 days. He was devising a plan to be considered a true warrior, but then he heard something breaking. It was Yu training. The captain was thinking that, although the confrontation had ended, based on his family's behavior, the Sun family would certainly seek revenge. So, he wasn't sure what they would do about the girl. She had just finished training and was opening a bottle of water. After drinking, she noticed the captain was staring at her and asked what he was looking at. He called her over. She asked what it was, and he handed her a kind of necklace and told her to wear it and never take it off. Looking at the red cross, she said it was beautiful and asked what it was. He told her to consider it a protective crutch and not to lose it. She thanked him and promised to take good care of it. A member of the captain's team came running to him after a long run and said he had discovered something. The captain asked if it was some news about the Sun family. She said that members of that family were looking around for shops to buy property. The captain deduced that it seemed the family was still holding back, not wanting to get violent until they were stabilized. There was someone outside who was always there, pretending to be taking out or putting away trash. When Yi Tian passed by, that person was still there. That person tried to read his mind using spiritual power. When Yi Tian blocked him, the person couldn't understand how he had learned to use spiritual powers. Only great social artists possessed that skill. Yi Tian had known for a long time that someone was there, sent by a member of the Lin family. He thought they had too much money to be wasting like like that. Yi Tian went to the martial artists market. It seemed like he was looking for something. A month ago, the captain of the Feng Wolf team discovered some information about the Sun family. To ensure the purity of their swordsmanship talent, the Sun family didn't hesitate to marry close relatives for generations. If they had a child with a mental or physical disability, they would secretly eliminate them. He thought the family was crazy and sick. The Sun family store was opening that day, with discounts on everything. Many people were coming in, congratulating young Sun, and hoping his wealth would continue to grow. He was being very cordial with the customers outside the store. On the other side, Yi Tian took a peek at his status window. The name was Sun Feng, cultivation talent at high, and swordsmanship talent at apex. He was filled with rage just looking at him and simply wished he would go to hell. Then, he looked at his own status window. His name, cultivation at apex, speed at apex, swordsmanship at intermediate, shadow talent at low, healing at apex, and strength at high. Yi Tian was heading to the Nansban cemetery. He climbed the steps and placed a bouquet of flowers on a grave, saying he had come to visit his parents. He bowed respectfully and told them that he had decided to leave the Linhai base and would take his sister to a better base. He said he had come to see them one last time to show them how much he had grown. Even at his parents' grave, he sensed a presence. Someone was approaching. There was a person at another grave watching him. The man was now standing on one of the graves, preparing to attack him. Sensing the attack, Yi Tian readied his sword, and as the opponent struck, he managed to block it. The man attacking him said that to defeat Sun Feng, he must have some skill. Yi Tian asked the man if he was the Sun family's dog, saying he had been waiting for him for a long time, and the two began their sword fight. The man attacked with his sword, and Yi Tian defended. Both were prepared to fight to the death. After preparing to attack, the man said that if he had killed Yi Tian after the battle, people would gossip, and Yi Tian should be thankful for living another month. Yi Tian rushed at him, saying he talked too much. They began dueling with swords again. They were so fast and strong that the fight was almost invisible. The strikes were at a high level. They were engaged in a fierce battle in the cemetery. Yi Tian saw the flowers get hit by a strike. The man said he was Sun Feng's master, and that they were like father and son. If Yi Tian had hurt Sun Feng, then he had to die. He said that the cemetery was a fitting place for the fight, saying this while Yi Tian was arranging the flowers he had brought for his parents. The man said it would be appropriate for him to die there. He said that if Yi Tian kneeled before him and begged, he might show some mercy, and then he would open the graves of Yi Tian's parents to reunite the family. He asked if Yi Tian had a little sister, and assured him that the reunion would be soon. After finishing organizing the bouquet, Yi Tian was blind with rage. He asked the man in front of him if he was asking for his death. He activated his speed talent at the advanced level. The man could no longer see Yi Tian's movements, who attacked with ferocity. They clashed swords again, but when the man thought he could escape, Yi Tian grabbed him by the shirt and held him. Yi Tian threw him from above with a speed and height that were extraordinary. It took a moment for the man to fall, and when he hit the ground, the area was covered in dust. He lay on the ground, his sword at his side, in the midst of the dust that rose as he fell. Barely able to open his eyes, he asked if Yi Tian was a grandmaster. Yi Tian was no longer listening, consumed by rage, hatred, and vengeance. It was already dusk when Yi Tian was collecting the loser's belongings and found a sword technique skill that seemed to be good. The weapon wasn't much better than what he already had, but now it was his. It was late, and he had to go home, or else his sister would start complaining again. By the time he returned, night had fallen, and the disguised man was still in front of their house, always keeping an eye on Yi Tian's movements. They would pass by each other, pretending not to notice one another. Yi Tian greeted him and said it had already been a month since he'd been standing there, and invited him in for some tea. The man politely took off his cap and said he would accept. In the house, Captain Yi Tian asked him to come in. When his sister noticed he had arrived, she was happy. He asked her to prepare tea since he had invited someone over. With the golden dragon leopard cub in her arms, she agreed to do so. The captain arrived and asked Yi Tian who that man was. Then the man introduced himself, saying he came from the Lin family, and his name was Lin Zhe. After a while, the captain realized that he recognized him. It was Lin Zhe, the legendary elder. This recognition left the guest somewhat embarrassed. When Yi Yu announced the tea was ready, the captain rushed to fetch it. She looked on, never imagining her master to be so hospitable. The visitor took the cup and thanked them. After being invited upstairs for tea, he concluded that Yi Tian might have something important to say, to which Yi Tian admitted he did. He went over to his sister, looked at her, and asked Lin Zhe to do him the favor of taking his sister to the martial pavilion and leaving her in Miss Yuling's care. His sister was caught by surprise, not expecting this. The man thought about the martial pavilion and never imagined Yi Tian had any connection to it. Looking at her, he noticed the token hanging around her neck with the martial pavilion emblem on it. Lin Zhe told him not to worry, he could trust him, and he would personally deliver his little sister to Miss Yu. Yi Tian thought of giving a gift to the captain, as he had been very kind. Then he introduced the captain to Lin Zhe, saying that if he joined the Lin family, he would surely become a great talent. The captain almost had a heart attack. The man said it was a small thing, as the Lin family was always looking for talent, and from that moment on, the captain would be his disciple. Yi Tian then pushed him and said that he had hurried without greeting the doctor. The captain knelt and greeted his master, asking for his blessings. Then Lin Zhe said he was a good disciple and could rise, and the captain thanked him as he stood. Lin Zhe thought that by doing this small favor, he could get closer to Yi Tian, which would be a great achievement for the Lin family. As he was charmed by the sister, he began to feel unwell. She realized he had trusted everything to other people, so what was he going to do? He said he just had to take care of a few things, but she immediately knew he was lying. She knew it wasn't just a few small matters and warned him not to lie or hide anything from her. He insisted it was just some minor tasks, and that he would be back soon, while Xiao Jin would protect her. Holding the golden dragon leopard cub, his sister asked if Xiao Jin was strong. She gave up arguing, knowing it wouldn't do any good. He wouldn't listen anyway. Yu asked him to be careful and not take unnecessary risks, saying that safety was the most important thing. He reassured his sister that he would be careful. At the Sun family estate, during another night shift, the guards were commenting that no one would dare cause trouble on the Sun family property. However, someone appeared, walking in their direction. One of the guards told the idiot to leave, as unauthorized people weren't allowed there. But the intruder didn't care, attacking the guard and knocking him out. With the way clear, he continued on. One of the guards, looking on, wondered what he was doing. Yi Tian looked at that guard and told him not to worry, as he was just there to clean up the mess. The guard went to report to the boss that there was a problem. He explained that someone had broken into the estate and injured their men. The boss asked if it was serious, thinking that everyone in Lin High Base was weak. But the boss was happy because someone finally appeared brave enough to come and sacrifice themselves. He ordered the guards to advance and eliminate whoever it was. The guards ran to see who it was and to eliminate them. However, one by one, they were being defeated. The boss was about to personally deal with the intruder. Yi Tian continued causing chaos there. The boss arrived and saw that many of his men had already been lost. Looking at Yi Tian, he asked him what his name was. Holding one of the guards, Yi Tian looked at him and said his name was Yi Tian. Sun Kong, patriarch of the Sun clan and father of Sun Feng, a high-level warrior, said that Yi Tian had a lot of courage. He then asked his elders to attack him. Suddenly, several people appeared, and Yi Tian realized it was an ambush. He was surrounded by elders from all sides. They were using advanced techniques to control him. He realized that it was a talent type of control. He was caught and fell, trapped by that talent. All the elders attacked him. It seemed like the end for him. Someone said they had waited so long for this, only to find that he was just a kid. Many people were simply watching him fall to the ground. Some found it boring. The boss said that normally he wouldn't get involved, but being killed by his own hands would be a great honor for Yi Tian. He thanked the elders for their efforts, and said he believed that kid had some treasure on him. He told the elders to consider it a gift, and take everything. Then someone found something familiar. It was Elder Jin's knife, the one Yi Tian had eliminated in the cemetery. The man hit Yi Tian in the face, grabbing his head and demanding to know where Elder Jinche was. He should have been with the young master Sun Feng. He asked again what Yi Tian had done with the elder. He ordered him to speak immediately, but Yi Tian just smiled. Amused by the situation, Yi Tian told the man to guess where the elder was. The chief ordered them to immediately search for the young master in the store, and find him at all costs. Then they asked what they would do with that guy. Even though Yi Tian had been captured, he had that sinister look in his eyes, the kind he had when he was very fond of a skill. The chief ordered them to cut the tendons in his hands and feet and throw him in the dungeon. One of the elders escorting Yi Tian ordered him to move quickly, so he simply deactivated the secret ability one of the elders had used to restrain him, and he attacked the elder escorting him to the dungeon, who didn't even notice when he was hit. He simply fell to the ground, and the chief was astonished when he realized that Yi Tian had just been hiding his strength. He ordered a quick spread of the word. Everyone began to surround him again. The elders started to unleash their special abilities all at once. One of them was very angry because this guy was not only irritating but also had a very dangerous aura. Yi Tian calmly walked toward the elders as if he were just hunting another prey. Of all of them, the only one he wanted was the chief. He wanted to take down Sun Kong, the patriarch of the family. Seeing that the fight was about to start, Sun Kong prepared himself for battle. Releasing a surge of energy, he declared that he would show what he was capable of. Yi Tian, with his shadowy soul, didn't care and charged in as he always did with both people and beasts. Sun Kong noticed the ferocity in Yi Tian's gaze. Without delay, Yi Tian attacked with enough force to send Sun Kong flying, crashing into several places before landing hard on the ground. Getting up angrily, Sun Kong told the elders to stop standing around and to attack him all at once. They prepared to strike, but Yi Tian was too fast, engaging each of them with his extreme strength. He was so fast that it was hard to follow the fight. He even taunted the elders, saying they were pretty strong. Another elder, thinking Yi Tian had his guard down, tried to catch him off guard while he was fighting someone else. This elder used a binding skill, but before he could touch him, Yi Tian countered, sending him flying as well. In one move, he had taken down 2 elders. Looking at the elder, Yi Tian said he wouldn't fall for that trick twice. He glared at the elder with a mocking smile. The elder retorted that Yi Tian was full of himself but hadn't shown anything. Enjoying the challenge, Yi Tian took the bait and once again was caught in the same trap, only this time at his feet. Someone remarked that the atmosphere had gotten very tense. That elder had a strange look on his face. Then, someone came forward to face him, a woman surrounded by beasts, seemingly controlling them. Even though Yi Tian was trapped by the feet, thanks to the elder's skill, he decided it was best to retreat, as the woman's secret technique seemed dangerous. But her beasts were incredibly fast as well, so fast that Yi Tian was impressed. As he retreated, he suddenly found himself face to face with 2 of the beasts. There was no choice but to fight them. A cloud of fire and smoke rose after they used their death explosion attack. Hearing the explosions, the woman ascended to see where they were coming from. She wanted to know who this man was and why he was behaving like this in the city. Xiao Yu called her, saying Lin Zhe, the great warrior Lin, wished to speak with her. She couldn't believe that man had returned. She didn't even want to see him. Xiao Yu explained that this time he was bringing Yi Tian's sister, and he didn't know what the problem was. When she learned the details, the woman seemed more willing. Tea was offered to the visitors while they waited. Yi Yu was downcast and very sad. Elsewhere in the city, Yi Tian had taken a blast from the explosion. He was thrown far away, hitting the ground hard. A crater formed where he landed, and a cloud of dust rose into the air. Sun Kong was impressed with the elder, Sun Ling. Even the master couldn't escape her death explosion technique. The blast was so strong that the Sun family leader was coughing because of the dust and smoke rising into the air. This time, she had done an excellent job. Luciana was pleased to hear all the praise. Another elder asked what they should do with the young man, as he was gravely injured and didn't have much time left. The chief ordered them to finish him off right there, but an energy-infused sword was hurled in the elder's direction. The elder just watched where it was coming from. He was struck by that energy-encased sword. Yi Tian was healing himself while they were standing around gloating over his body. The elder was sent flying toward the wall. The other elders, as well as the chief, were worried. The elder, now impaled against the wall with a sword through him, looked like he was finished. As they were all preoccupied with the elder pinned to the wall, Yi Tian took the opportunity to reposition himself. They were all searching for him, not knowing where he was. Yi Tian caught one of the elders off guard and slammed his face into the ground. He finished him off with a single blow. Leaving that elder behind, Yi Tian moved on to the next one. Filled with fury, he attacked his next target with all his might, striking down another elder. Leaping into the air, he aimed to land more hits, this time on the elder woman. She, too, was struck by him and defeated with a single blow. Leaving the elder woman on the ground, Yi Tian moved on to the next target. Sun Kong, the patriarch of the family, was calling for his elders. When he saw Yi Tian in front of him, he fell from the shock. Sun Kong didn't waste any time and launched his weapon at Yi Tian. He wanted him to be exterminated quickly. Sun Kong shouted, unsure if it was from pain or rage. Yi Tian also had a difficult-to-read expression on his face. There were signs that someone there had been struck. Yi Tian was standing, holding his sword, while the opponent was already lying on the ground. His sword had evidence that the blow originated from it. However, someone else saw the evidence in that sword. His son was coming right behind and saw everything. In a fit of rage, he screamed for his father. Yi Tian was strangely satisfied with what he had just done. As Sun Feng arrived, he found his father lying on the ground. Yi Tian turned around, saw the young man, and asked if he was the young master's son. He fell into despair and cried out for his father. Yi Tian said he arrived just in time, so he didn't have to look for him. Sun Feng noticed he was about to step on his fallen father. He was blinded by rage and charged forward. Ready to throw a punch, he ordered him to get his hands off. He completed the movement, but his opponent dodged, avoiding the hit. Yi Tian activated his strength talent and delivered a blow to the opponent's abdomen. The impact was powerful. He even fell to the ground. He was pounding the ground, thinking about how that guy was a scoundrel. He was filled with so much hatred that if he had enough strength, he would tear the ground apart with his bare hands. He looked at the man standing in front of him and could only think about why there was such a difference in power. Seeing the monstrosity that the man displayed in his actions, he apologized to his father for being so weak. Yi Tian asked him if he had given up on resisting. He placed a hand on the head of his enemy, holding his hair tightly. He raised his other hand, which held his sword, and told him he would send him to join his father. But he didn't complete the attack because he felt the force of an attack coming in his direction. It was something very powerful. He imagined it might be a thunder attack but wasn't sure. His eyes were wide open as if he was thinking about something and couldn't finish it. He leaped as high as he could. Standing on a plate, he realized what it could be. Looking up, he could see between the clouds and thunder the silhouette of someone. That was actually a grandmaster. He asked him if he was trying to kill everyone and added that he was a cruel brat. The son of the patriarch of the Sun family, seeing the grandmaster Yao Yi, reported to him that the one who had eliminated his father was that guy who said the grandmaster should do justice for the Sun family. Yi Tian, realizing that the bastard was talking about him, regretted not killing that scoundrel. Grandmaster Yao Yi said that if that was the case, then he should die. He amplified a bit of energy in his fingers and launched an attack, strong enough to put the protagonist on alert, descending from the plate and moving to another location, to distance himself from that attack. The attacks continued on a larger scale, targeting the opponent who couldn't stop due to the level of speed. The attacks were swarming him, coming from the Grandmaster. Yao Yi stated that below the Grandmaster, everyone was ants and that resisting would be pointless. Sun Feng thought it best to flee, as if his Grandmaster attacked, that city would be destroyed. Blocking his escape was the one who had reaped the life of his father. When he saw his path blocked by that monstrous figure, he felt a deep fear. Yi Tian looked at him with a thirst for revenge. The attacks continued to come down like thunder strikes, launched to exterminate the talented and cruel Yi Tian. He was extremely skilled. He was quick enough to dodge, leaving only Sun Feng, who wasn't quick enough to get away before being struck by one of the lightning bolts. Half dazed, the young man asked the Grandmaster what that had been. Yao Yi said that with age, one's eyesight didn't function as well. Sun Feng looked up but was terrified. Now he had two problems. While the Grandmaster spoke with the young man from the Sun family, his opponent was sneaking up behind him, with the intention of striking him by launching his attack. He could see that something blocked and protected the Grandmaster, and he couldn't break the barrier. After insisting a bit, he realized it was an elemental energy barrier. Inside the barrier and very well protected, the Grandmaster merely looked at him with disdain. Yi Tian continued trying to overcome that barrier. Yao Yi passed him disdainful glances. He also took advantage of the enemy being close enough and launched another of his powerful strikes. Yi Tian seemed to be electrocuted by that thunder ability. With such powerful attacks, he couldn't continue resisting and fell to the ground. On the ground, trying to get up, he was was happy. He thought that the power of a true master could not be underestimated. He held tightly onto his shirt, pulled it to remove the remnants, and said he would also give it his all. After that, he threw the rest of his shirt, burnt by the lightning, onto the ground. He positioned himself and stood to face the Grand Master, who was one of the two great masters of the Iron Fang base. Looking at his status window, he realized that the only talent he had was advanced cultivation mode. He asked the Grand Master if he only had that mediocre talent. He told him he was just an ordinary master. Yao Yi didn't like the way the boy spoke to him. Yi Tian was advising him not to get involved where he wasn't called. He thought that in reality, becoming a master was difficult, and if a fight broke out, he could lose arms and legs. Sun Feng interjected again in their conversation and told the Grand Master that that kid was very arrogant and wanted to destroy their Iron Fang base. Yi Tian, looking back, realized that the bastard still hadn't died. Sun Feng continued shouting that they had to end him once and for all. The Grand Master was heeding the boy's advice, and again launched a thunderbolt at his opponent. If Yi Tian hadn't moved a bit during that attack, it would have hit him hard. The Grand Master told him he had good speed and could dodge surprise attacks. Who was already very close again, thanked him for the compliment. He took a leap and charged at the Grand Master. This time he was trying to hit him with powerful kicks. When his kick merely grazed the barrier, the Grand Master looked and said it was a pity that his attacks were weak. After Yi Tian activated his strength talent, his kick took on a whole new level of power. Seeing that he had managed to break through the barrier, he put more intent into his kicks, throwing the Grand Master to the ground. After falling, the Grand Master couldn't believe it and asked what was happening, wondering how Yi Tian could suddenly increase his strength. Yi Tian continued walking toward Yao Yi. Yao Yi told him that he didn't seem like an ordinary practitioner. As he said this, he realized his opponent was preparing a new attack. When the powerful attack was launched, the Grand Master was sent flying even further. Managing to steady himself in the air, the Grand Master also prepared a psychic power, which was received by Yi Tian. Yao Yi, after launching his psychic power, was ready for more. With clenched fists, channeling his energy, he rushed to punch his opponent. The punch's power was felt greatly by Yi Tian. However, the Grand Master didn't let the boy fall. He grabbed him by the ankle. He was preparing to throw him. In his hand, he prepared a 10,000 thunders attack. Then, he used a tract and launched that explosive power, a power capable of lighting up many meters around. It sent Yi Tian crashing into the ground, forming a crater around him. The Grand Master thought he had won the fight and said it seemed to be over. He stood near the spot where the boy had fallen, watching. The young Master Sun Feng also seemed to be celebrating. He was overjoyed, thinking that Yi Tian had been defeated. He ran toward the Grand Master, praising him for his power and how incredible he thought he was. But the Grand Master had a coughing fit and brought his hand to his mouth. Looking at his hand, he realized there were traces that he had been injured during the fight. He wondered how he had gotten hurt. The Grand Master told young Master Sun Feng that he would leave the rest to him because he needed to go soon, or it might affect his training. Sun Feng suddenly felt his body paralyzed, thinking if this was the pressure of a true master. After Yao Yi went to recover, Sun Feng, feeling confident and secure, spat on the ground. After spitting on Yi Tian, he asked him where all his arrogance had gone, saying he had been humiliated by the Sun family. Kicking the fallen boy repeatedly, he said he would tear him apart and feed him to the dogs. To young Master Sun's dismay, Yi Tian's eyes opened. He quickly got up from the ground, grabbed the young man by the neck, and lifted him into the air. Looking into Sun Feng's eyes, he asked him to repeat everything he had just said if he had the courage. Even if he wanted to, he couldn't, because the pressure Yi Tian was putting on his neck was too much. In a fit of rage, Yi Tian simply summoned his sword. Facing his imminent end, young Master Sun Feng screamed for the Grand Master's help. A few seconds later, he was struck by his opponent's blade. Now lying on the ground, he was met with the bloodthirsty gaze of his victorious opponent, Yi Tian. From a distance, Yi Tian was being watched while using his healing talent. As he activated his talent, he was regenerating all the parts of his body affected by the strikes. Now, he was ready once more to finish off the remaining elders lurking nearby. One of them, watching, couldn't believe the man was still alive. He noticed the wounds were healing and had no idea how it was possible, wondering if Yi Tian had an immortal jellyfish talent. He couldn't just stand there and shouted, "Who the hell are you?" Surrounded by his energy, Yi Tian replied that he was just an ordinary guy who had awakened an inferior talent. Yi Tian used the pure breeze slash attack. The elder wanted to know how he was using the Sun family's secret technique. He realized there were many of them, and he couldn't dodge them all. He was hit by one of those attacks. The others kept coming, until he was bombarded by those attacks from the Sun family. Yi Tian was moving toward him. The elder said that even if he perished, he would take Yi Tian down with him. Suddenly, Yi Tian was no longer in front of him, and he had no idea where he had gone. But his opponent was behind him, preparing to attack. After landing a powerful punch to the opponent's face, Yi Tian said he was just returning what had been given to him before. His expression was one of someone ready to finish him off at any moment. Lying on the ground, the elder crawled, trying to distance himself, screaming that Yi Tian was a bastard. Yi Tian lifted his foot to stomp on him. He pressed his foot into the elder's face with force. He told him that he hadn't given him permission to move. Even with Yi Tian's foot on his face, the elder still managed to scream for oldly. Someone from atop a building called down, reminding them that they had been warned they were on Iron Fang base territory and should respect the Lin Hai base's territory and behave. Yi Tian wondered how he hadn't sensed that man's presence before. Then the man descended from the building. He walked toward Yi Tian, introducing himself as Li Mao, the master of Iron Fang base. He told Young Yi that his talent was extraordinary. He also said that, like the other man, he was a master too and asked if Yi Tian wanted to play. While still pressing his foot on the elder, Yi Tian noticed the master and asked if he was going to get beaten up too. The master said there was a saying that you help strangers and ignore relatives, and he wasn't going to interfere in this. He said that although Elder Yao Yi was from Iron Fang base, they didn't follow the same philosophy. The master, watching as Yi Tian stomped on Elder Yao Yi, told him to do whatever he wanted. But the elder, not liking it at all, despite being stomped on, still had strength and began to transform. Yi Tian noticed the transformation in time and moved away. Very angry, the man who had taken on a gigantic form said that they would all go to the afterlife together. He had activated his secret burning explosion ability. His body started to change. The master said he was going to self-destruct. Yi Tian thought he was very brave, but that wouldn't work on him, as he would only perish by Yi Tian's hand. So he gathered momentum and flew up to where the man was. Reaching close to his face, he used shadow blades in a chaotic attack. This made the big guy start to stagger and fall. Seeing this, Yi Tian smiled and seemed very pleased. It wasn't long before the giant fell and smashed into the ground, forming another erosion around his body. Realizing he had succeeded, Yi Tian began to unsheath his sword and started to feel something. It was as if the sky opened and a golden light of energy descended upon him. After that, the sky returned to calm. The master noticed that this person was different. Looking at Yi Tian, fully energized, he realized that by eliminating the master, he had broken through his limits. He concluded that he had reached the great warrior level, judging by the energy he felt coursing through his body. The master was very impressed, fanning himself as he expressed it. He said he didn't expect the young Yi to be capable of eliminating the master while still at the elite level, adding that his strength had left him astonished. Yi Tian asked the man to get to the point and stop rambling, to which the master replied that young Yi should be a little more patient. He said that the Yao Yi family had always opposed the Iron Fang base. They advocated for using harsh measures to assert themselves at the Lin Hai base, while he supported an approach of equality to coexist with Lin Hai base. Yi Tian noticed the man had incredible speed. The master told him that he had already completely destroyed the Sun family and hoped that his anger toward the Iron Fang base had ended there. He said that at that moment, the Iron Fang and Lin Hai bases would be allies, working together to prosper. He turned to the young man and asked what he thought of this. He was pleased and said that was how it should be. Then the young man told him to negotiate with the Lin family, as they were the leaders of the Lin Hai base, and the master asked if the young man had no plans to dominate the base. He replied that it wasn't his thing. He then bid farewell, saying he had things to do, but the master told him they were in the middle of a detailed meeting. Yi Tian simply used his speed and left, leaving the master behind, watching. The master had his own conclusions about the young man. He believed Yi Tian had a bright future ahead of him. At the Lin family mansion, someone was gardening. He observed the branches and carefully pruned those that didn't belong. The gardener was seated, calmly trimming and watching the petals being cut. The petals fell slowly outside the jar. That elderly gardener was Lin Wanli, the leader of the Lin family, at the peak of the great warrior level. After looking at his gardening, he thought it was perfect. Someone someone with firm steps approached the gardener, and it was Lin Minhzi, the son of the current Lin family leader, at the elite warrior level. He spoke to his father, saying he had discovered the reason for the explosion in the city center the previous night, and his father asked him to explain. He said it had been an attack on the Sun family building. The family leader, still finishing his gardening, said people must be foolish, as the Sun family had a master protecting them. Then his son continued telling his father, and asked if he remembered when he mentioned a young warrior named Yi Tian. His father said he vaguely remembered. Lin Minhzi said it was that young man who had exterminated the entire Sun family, including Master Yao Yi. Upon hearing those words, Lin Wanli dropped his scissors. Wide-eyed in shock, he asked his son to repeat what he had just said to see if he could believe it. After his son repeated everything, they were still in shock. They thought that young Yi Tian might put an end to the battle between the Iron Fang base and Lin Hai. He said that with this, both Lin Hai base and the Lin family had been saved. His son told his father that there was more. The Grand Master of Iron Fang base, Mao, had agreed to meet them that morning. He mentioned that he was already preparing tea in the room. The master was already pouring the tea into the cup. The father asked if he had already arrived, but there wasn't even time to think, and in that case, he would go to talk to the master. Before that, he asked his son to pass his orders to all factions at Lin Hai base. They should protect Yi Tian and his family at all costs. If he wanted to create his own influence, all factions must give him full support. In short, no one should offend him in any way. The son didn't seem to agree, but obeyed his father's orders. At the martial pavilion, the small golden dragon leopard cub was napping, while Yu sat in a chair, pondering life. She was worried about her brother and whether he was alright. A lady offered tea to the captain, but he said he didn't want any as he had already had tea all night and was now wondering where the pavilion master was. The lady apologized, saying she truly didn't know what was going on with the pavilion master. The captain said he had been there before for business. The captain paced back and forth, asking how long they were going to keep waiting, while Lin Zhe, now his master, asked him to be patient. So they continued having more tea. Lin Zhe said he had known the pavilion master before. The captain was startled and asked how he had known her. He said that Yi Yu also knew her. She paused and looked at him, surprised, as she thought she didn't know her. The pavilion master arrived, and the lady announced her, apologizing for the delay. The sound of footsteps on heels was heard as the mistress of the place walked towards them. However, when her eyes met Yi Yu's, both froze. The captain looked at her and couldn't believe it. He even rubbed his eyes to make sure he wasn't seeing double. He carefully observed Yi Tian's sister. Then, he asked how they could be so identical. He said this while looking at both women, who were also looking at each other. The young lady serving tea yesterday had noticed this, and wondered if the mistress of the pavilion had a long-lost twin sister. Lin Zhe greeted the leader, and said it had been some time since he last saw her. He explained that this was Yi Tian's younger sister, whom he had requested to bring to the martial pavilion in search of reinforcement. The leader replied that such formality wasn't necessary. Yi Yu didn't seem comfortable there. The leader looked at her, and noticed how much she resembled Yi Tian's sister, though she didn't like it at all. She realized that this was why he had only treated her as a sister when he saved her, even hugging her, which now made her feel embarrassed. Looking at the girl, she asked if her name was Yi Yu, to which the girl replied that it was. Trying to be kind, she told the girl she could call her Mana if she wanted. Later, at the Warriors' Fair, there was a commotion over beast juice. Someone arrived, saying they were back at the martial pavilion. The person's visit was unexpected. They didn't think they could arrive so quickly. The leader of the martial pavilion said she had been waiting for him, now that he was important at Lin Hai base. Tucking her hair behind her ear, she said she wouldn't disrespect him. And looking at him in his new attire, she called him Grand Master Yi Tian. As soon as he laid eyes on her, he immediately looked at her status window. He found Yuling's cultivation talent incredible, as she had gone from intermediate to advanced. Her status window showed her name, high cultivation, intermediate swordsmanship talent, and below average speed. There was no need to ask. It was surely related to the Death Lake treasure. He thought about that woman. However, she wasn't pleased and asked if he knew staring at a girl like that was rude. He apologized, saying he had been distracted. She told him to forget it. She wouldn't argue with him. Still, she didn't forget about their walk suggestion. He liked the idea and mentioned he'd heard the Lin family was interested in setting up a base just for him, and asked what she thought about it. She said such things didn't interest her, so he asked why it didn't if the next step was to keep training alone. He told her he was thinking about leaving and heading to MO High Base. She was startled, not wanting him to leave. Noticing she was acting strange, he asked her what was wrong. Sadly, she said it was nothing. They continued walking around. She looked at him in front of her, wondering why he wanted to leave. Noticing she had stopped, he asked why, since they were just strolling. She seemed conflicted about something, but said she was ready to go. Later, when Yu met her brother again, she was overjoyed. When she hugged him tightly, he told her she had grown so much, yet still wanted to hug him so tightly right away, asking her to behave like a lady. She apologized, saying she missed him a lot. He thanked everyone for taking care of his sister. Lin Zhe told him there was no need to thank them. Xiao Yu and her young lady were watching the two depart. Then, the leader asked her assistant to call Elder Yu Zhang to the office, as she needed to talk to him. Xiao Yu thought it was quite sudden. He asked the young lady if she was really sure about doing this. She replied that she was absolutely sure, and left the rest to him. Lin Zhe was still trying to convince Yi Tian to stay and start a family there, but the young man had already made up his mind and was leaving with his sister. He thanked them for helping him get that car, as it would now make getting around much easier. Lin Zhe said he admired him and that if he were a few years younger, he would definitely join him on his adventures. The captain mentioned that the mistress of the Martial Pavilion hadn't come to say goodbye to them, even though they were close friends. Now that the captain mentioned it, he realized she hadn't come to see them off. Yi Tian told them to forget it, as they weren't going to wait for her. The captain told Yi to keep training hard and not to be lazy, to which she replied she would do her best. Everyone said their goodbyes and prepared to leave, when suddenly, dressed in different clothes, the mistress of the place appeared. Yi Tian looked to see what she wanted. Xiao Yu asked her mistress and young lady to wait for her, as she was going too. Everyone stopped to see what the two wanted. She opened the car door and told them to hurry up and get in. Yi Tian asked her if she was coming too. She replied of course, she wouldn't be in the car if she weren't. He smiled, satisfied to have more people with him. He asked his sister and Xiao Yu to sit in the back seat. Yi Tian asked her why she had suddenly decided to go with them to MO High Base. She told him not to ask, that if she said she wanted to, it was because she wanted to, period. He gave her a suspicious look and told her that if she wanted to go to train with him, she should just say so and not make such a fuss. She yelled at him, saying she had already told him it was her own choice and had absolutely nothing to do with him, and if he was in the car, it was just a coincidence. Now on the road, she put her hand out of the car and waved goodbye to Master Lin and the captain of the Wolf Fang squad. Lin Zhe knew his future was very promising. On the road were 4 companions and the golden dragon leopard cub. Yi Tian was saying goodbye to Lin High Base.